Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Game Master Happy Hour. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We've got all of the people in the Discord who have joined us, and today we're going to be talking about GM prep. Now, this is going to be an interesting stream where all of us kind of talked a little bit about how we're going to show off the prep that we have. We're all really excited to share. And we do have a couple of questions that have been posted in the Discord channel. And if any of you guys have any questions while we're going through this, pose them in. But my name's Tyler. I'm with the Min-Max podcast. I'm joined by three other very handsome gentlemen. Why don't you guys go ahead and sound off?
Sound off. Do you have an order? I'm Allard from the Dice Crisis podcast.
We go very free form here on the GM Happy Hour.
It's so loose, and you're too kind. We're not all good looking, but hey, it's Griff from the Hideous Laughter podcast. I put the hideous in hideous laughter.
Well, I put the tomfoolery in Southern tomfoolery. So my name is Adam, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, this is going to be the very first episode of the Game Master Happy Hour that we're going to be posting directly to YouTube when we're done with the stream. So for those of you who don't know out there on YouTube, the four of us are Game Masters that all have podcasts laid out in the Paizo-verse. We all GM different games, or at least different, configurations of games. I GM Pathfinder 2nd Edition for the Min-Max podcast. Griffin GM's 1st Edition and the game that he's playing. We've got Allard is playing a 3.5 converted to Pathfinder 1st Edition game. And Adam is our Starfinder game master. So we all have varying levels
with sound effects.
Yeah, varying levels of experience with game mastering, but we all kind of came together when it comes to Paizo. We all love the Paizo games, and after hanging out, in different ways, meeting each other through Discords and some different games that we played together, we just decided to get together because every time the four of us are all talking, we just talk for hours about game mastering, and we thought, why not share that with people? So
do you notice every time the four of us are talking, we're also all drinking?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, that's also a very common thing.
Cheers.
Well, now we force you guys to listen to our drunken rambling, so cheers.
Didn't call it happy hour for nothing.
Yeah, we'll see how it comes after the 2 hours, which is still half time from what we usually do.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty neat. Orderly. It's done in a timely fashion.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we're known for. Timely.
Yeah, they call it orderly, not disorderly.
Yeah. I'm saying.
So I think as far as this week's concerned, since our topic is GM prep, this week I'm hosting in the Min-Max podcast or Discord, so I'm going to touch a little bit about how I prepare for the podcast, and I think I'm going to start here primarily because I think I probably have the shortest contribution, to be honest with you, and we'll see once everybody else starts talking. But I have two different styles of prep. One is when I'm running APs, and the other one is when I'm actually homebrewing. I haven't homebrewed content for 8-9 years. So that was been so long ago. But the way that I prepare for the podcast is I like to keep a physical notebook. I've got this little – hold on, let's see if I can – I've got this little notebook that I keep with me wherever I go. And I just – anytime I have an idea for whether something in the AP that I've read –
Oh, are we showing off notebooks?
Yeah.
I have that same one. Is that the gold one?
It's green.
It shows up a little gold on your screen.
Yeah, everything is orange in my.
I have the actual gold version. That's why I got so excited.
Yeah.
Nice. I had silver.
Guys, his dogs have the same name. You have the same notebook. What else you hiding?
We also kiss all the time on the weekends. It's just really.
Where do you guys
Makes
meet?
sense when you dig into it.
Yeah,
Where do you guys meet? I got to be able to meet there at about the same amount of travel time.
It's
you
like
have a
where
notebook?
Springfield is.
Do you have the notebook?
No.
Well, sorry.
Not invited.
Not invited.
I can get one. Tell me where it is. I'll find it.
Sorry, Tyler. You were saying
No, it's
GM
okay.
prep.
It's okay. I think one of the biggest things that I'd like to do for prep is I do it in kind of stages. When I'm going through and I get an adventure path and I first, decide to run something for a group, I'll try to read the whole thing as much as I possibly can front to back, because I want to get an idea of where it is, where it's going, the overall story arcs, and just the major beats. I love the way that Paizo writes their APs, but they're pretty bad about writing foreshadowing into books.
I think that's part of the 6 different writers issue, right?
Absolutely.
It's also part of the charm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You fill in. You do your own foreshadowing.
Yeah. But even after reading it for the first time front to back, one of the things that I'll do is I'll go, and once I know where we're at, I'll read that section every night twice and just bounce around where I think my party's going to go with it. And then on the night before play, I pull up all the stat blocks and I rules check everything that I think they're going to come across. Because for those of you who don't know, we pride ourselves pretty heavily on being the 2E Rules podcast. And I straighten my jacket while we say it. Because we dove right into that. We're all longtime first edition players, and we knew that second edition was going to be a complicated system to start off with. Theoretically, it's a modular and simple system, but when you're dealing with people who have been playing tabletop games for years and years, and they're all entrenched in their own games, pulling out all of those assumptions and pulling out all those preconceptions. It's hard.
2E is I think a lot of people don't realize just how much it reinvented what we think we know about how a lot of this, because a lot of the terms are the same, right? It's the same classes and you see some of the same abilities, but the way they function in the new math and the new formula is so different, and you do have to unlearn it a little bit.
Yeah, I've found running and playing 2E that the biggest misstep is the old assume makes an ass out of you and me. We always, as first edition players, just assume how something works. And, you guys do a great job of pointing this out, but like the whole system of 2E scales because everything is kind of reinvented, even though it's a similar concept, a perception check, whatever. The scaling is completely different. And that's where assuming gets you into trouble, because it makes the game deadly or it makes the game way too easy.
Absolutely, 100%. And I found that on both fronts, especially when you're running an encounter, when you just kind of look at it from the outset. You take that first look at it, which is part of the reason why I read the sections and the encounters that we're going to come across several times throughout the week before we play, is because I've gotten stuck in that, I think this is going to be an easy encounter. They're just going to steamroll this. And then come to find out that a couple of bad rolls swing it in the other direction so hard. It makes a big difference. It really does. I think I'll probably talk more about how I used to prep my homebrew games when we get a little bit later on, because it matches a little bit with, it lines up with how Griff does his prep, because he was sharing that with us a little bit ahead of time, especially in the use of applications that you use to organize. And boy, that just, I don't want to foreshadow too much, but boy, that one note.
Yeah, who are you, Paizo?
No, he wouldn't be Paizo.
No,
Paizo
right,
would never
right.
tell you that was coming.
Who are you,
Until
not
he hit you in the face.
Paizo? Yeah. Well, okay, so I'll talk a little bit about how I prep, which I don't think I have the healthiest prepping style, because all of my prep happens like a ping pong match inside my brain. And it's obviously, we do a lot of flashbacks and stuff, and that gets written out, and, lots of pass throughs and drafting and edits and stuff on the scripted stuff. But before we started podcasting, we played together a lot, and I've too many times was burned getting to a session where I spent hours prepping something that was supposed to happen that session, and the players going the complete opposite direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's part of the reason I don't prep as much as I used to, for that exact reason.
Yeah, like
It's
it's the thing is like, at first it would always frustrate me too. I'd be like, God, why aren't you doing this thing? Like, it makes so much more sense for you to do this, right? Like, why are you going and investigating that rock over there when there's clearly this marked door here that you're supposed to go through, But like the what I came to realize is that the what draws me to this is the same thing that draws me to music, and it's the ability to improvise. And so once I realized I could just translate those skills into this medium and like really embrace it, that's kind of when my prep shifted to like, all right, I'm gonna, as you said, Tyler, I'm gonna read these books over and over and over. I mean, I've read Signal of Screams from start to finish probably 8 times at this point. You know what I mean? Reading it all through while we're playing against the Aeon Throne, which I read that like easily 8 times as we were playing it, to try to keep all of it, as much of it on the forefront of my mind for when we get down to the session. Whatever the players are going to do, I have kind of a general idea of what's the overarching narrative, and kind of just letting it go, like letting go a little bit as a GM. Obviously there are encounters that you prep, right? So I'll study the stat blocks and make sure I understand their abilities, and that I'm not like screwing up the flow by having to go, oh, what does grab mean? What does attach mean? Like those types of things. I try to be on top of that as much as possible. And, I try to make sure that I'm looking at the right parts of the AP for where I think they're going to go. But so much of it is, once we sit down at the table, it's like I might have practiced all week, but sitting down at the table is like getting up on stage, and you just go, you stop thinking about it and you just roll with it,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where a lot of how my prep is just overthinking about it all the way up until we say, okay, hey, here we are. Welcome back to Southern Tomfoolery. And at that point, it's like kind of anything goes,
Yeah.
So I mean, that's my style. I wish I was more organized sometimes. Like, I have this notebook, but like there's definitely skips, like the way I have this is like, okay, episode 48, this and this is supposed to happen in 48, and then the next entry in my notebook is episode 52, and then the next entry is like, oh, episode 61, so I'm not as consistent with it as I would like to be. But sometimes you don't need that prep because you got a big fight that's going to take up most of the session, but for Signal of Screams, my God, it's all over the place and can be anywhere. So last thing I'll say before I turn it over to somebody else, a big part of the prep for that is talking to the players all the time. Like, I talk to them all the time, say, what do you want? What are you wanting to do? What are some things that you're interested? Where are your heads at? What, like, you can give me any level of specificity that you want, but I just kind of need to know what things you're interested in, so then I can set up scenes for you to interact with. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
And so I think table talk and, outside of session group talk is so important to part of the prep process.
Yeah, I think technology has helped us out a lot in that. Remember back when I was jamming before, like cell phones and group chats and shit like that were a real thing. It was hard to, you're 9 o'clock at night sitting in your room going, oh, I wonder what player X is going to do if this sort of situation were thrown at them. Now you can just message it to them, get an idea, talked about them, what their motivations are when those questions come to you, as opposed to be like, all right, we've got 15 minutes before our session starts, let's all go one-on-one in the room somewhere, right? That's a lot easier than it used to be.
Yep, for sure.
Does that mean I'm next?
I think
can go
so.
next. Right.
It's up to you, man. I got a little presentation.
Do you have a notebook?
I do not have a notebook.
You didn't even grab a notebook while you weren't talking? What the hell, dude?
No.
I thought
You had like 15 minutes.
I know I had prep time to get it, and I didn't use it, and that's what
Must
I'm going to
have
talk
been drinking.
about today. No, I guess so far I feel pretty good about my level of prep. Being more new to it than the rest of you, I still haven't really like nailed down a prepping process that I've figured that works for me. So right away, I read through all 6 books before we got into it, and then I think I reread the first book again before we started. For the book 1, I ran it just trying to remember things. I couldn't use my laptop because it was being used completely to record. So it was that if the players had to ask a question, they were going to have to look it up, or I was going to have to remember it. So there was some kind of whatever thing. So that was basically just reading it that 2 times, and then before every session, figuring out what was the main thing that they could run into. I guess just a lot of thinking about what are the things that I know my players are interested in, and I can maybe throw them for a loop. I knew that they all wrote in happy families, kind of. And so I knew that I had to think about ways to tear them apart so they can all be true adventurers. And then I just kind of like had those ideas of what I could do to kind of challenge their characters in more of an emotional way by like severing ties from home and that kind of thing, since they're all kind of young. And then when I felt like it was a good time to kind of naturally work those points in, or maybe force them in if I had nothing else planned, just kind of evolve it and not really have too much of a written mindset out for what was going to happen, but I knew the subject that I wanted to broach with whatever character. Then for like, because then I think a lot of my prep comes with like character building. So episodes, I'm getting a call from my godmother. Should I answer it?
On air?
Wait, did this become a call-in show?
So how exactly did you prep for this situation?
Godmother Sally,
Julie,
you're
I lost
online
my train
one.
of thought. No,
Was this a planned call? Like, hey,
it might
this
have
isn't
been.
going to good.
Yeah,
I
it's a
need you to
plan.
call.
She's a plan.
Yeah,
I gotta
get
go.
out of this.
My grandma's in the hospital. I got
You said that
So,
last
like-
week, Allard.
Stop doing that,
I
man.
have 2 grandmas, right? So for some of the kind of homebrew aspects that I wanted to like fill out a little bit more flavor, I would usually like build out a character in Hero Labs and give them a deal and try to like see how they would affect this area, and try to just like basically just imagine what they would do if they were just going about their daily business and a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds came in looking to fuck shit up, and just how they might react to it. Episodes like 12 through 14, it was all because I wanted to make a bunch of characters, and then I had a bunch of characters sitting around, and I felt like I wanted to bring in some just different flavor of the Galarian world into my players' faces. So
Can you give us an example?
Yeah.
it was I wanted to bring a plot point to light, and because another thing about the adventures that I've been doing is they're all pretty much every book is another sandbox in a way, or there's like a long timeline that things just can eventually will happen. So it's just kind of like understanding the area enough. And my example would be having a plot point that I wanted to develop, and then having a couple characters that I had made that kind of had a parallel theme to that plot point. And then I figured out a way that I could extrapolate on that with my gypsy caravan that came into town. And then I wanted just the most grandiose way to bring this little plot point to light, and I did it.
I can give you a thing or two to do with that gypsy caravan. Talk to me offline.
Yeah, we get our gypsy caravans could maybe meet up sometime. You know.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice.
We could hitch carts.
Oh boy, yeah. No, it's really interesting so far. There's a couple of themes that I think we've all been hitting on, and we've been talking a lot about prepping APs, and I'm sure that's going to be something that Griffin's going to get into here to a second. But I know there's a section of this that we haven't really touched yet, which is prepping your player's backstory and how it interacts with the world. But I just want to say something here real quick. Allard, out of all of the different style of APs that you could pick from to GM in your first couple of years as a GM, those sandbox books are some of the most difficult APs and books to GM. There's a lot of prep that goes into that. If not even just like physical note taking or putting things into OneNote, but just fully understanding how that interacts with the world and the story, as well as the greater, Inner Sea region in Galarian, or as Galarian as a whole. That's tough, man. And, Desna forbid if they end up going from chapter 1 in that book to chapter 3. You know what I mean?
True. If they could, like, if they really were a meticulous group that decided, like, I'm going to check every inch of the place that I'm about to go into, they would have got to part 4 very, very, very quickly and all died.
And be extremely underleveled for it.
Yeah. They would have all definitely died.
It's like Skyrim leveling, right? That's how we run this.
That's how it works, right?
That's how we run all of this.
Bonus, I don't know, as you go up. But, and so like the first book, I didn't take any notes for that book really. And I eventually kind of had more time between projects at work where I would just like read book 2 and then like summarize it in like a note-taking fashion. And so I've been running book 2 more off notes than the written text for book 2. And I basically just did it because I thought it was a way to just help remember things. And then now I just kind of use it to reference. But it's a lot of just knowing what and where everything is, and being ready for the party to run into it.
Yeah, I think we could do an entire stream on improv.
Yeah.
We should put that on our list, because improv
got to
is
go on the master list.
Yeah.
Let's
go and put
Oh
that
man,
now.
We're on this. My sister is an actress, kind of, I guess. So she tried to get me into improv at one point.
Oh yeah, how'd that
You
go?
were like, "Fuck no, I'm just gonna do a TTRPG podcast."
No,
I'll show you acting. I'm going to do a sandbox
one time.
adventure path
Go have
and
fun.
create 15 different characters. Well, Griffin, I think you're up.
Yeah, man. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the points you guys were touching on here, where I think it's really important, at least for my GMing style. I like to have at least as much of the book as possible in front of me at all times. Again, I think that's more of a safety net. And as we get into my notes, you'll see why. But I like to have read everything. I think for a home game more so than a podcasted game, you can probably get away with reading, the beginning and end of the book summaries and getting a feel for some of the pieces, hitting up the forums and seeing if like, oh, Paizo actually did a pretty good job here, so a little bit less of the onus is on you, or you're really fucked if you don't bring this in book 1. I think the forums, especially for some of the older APs, are super valuable in that way. So before I do anything, I like to look at that kind of stuff as I'm reading through for the first time. But I agree with all of you. I think I've read Broken Moon, which is the 3rd book of Carrying Crown, probably 10 times now. And most of that is because I've taken my story decently far off of the written rails of that book so far, and it pretty much starts to diverge pretty heavily from book 3. And while that's a good thing for a storytelling podcast, it's not like I'm going to forego all of everything Paizo's written, but I think that makes reading it and incorporating it into the way that you're going to tell the story that much more important, because it's not playing Carrying Crown if you completely rewrite a book, right? It's playing a homebrew that started as Carrying Crown. And so I'm trying to be cognizant of that as I'm prepping. But I think you guys made a good point. Bringing in character backstories is one of the biggest things that we do, because so much of the audio medium of this game is the payoff in the backstories and the tie-ins and the seeds that you plant at the beginning.
Agreed.
And so for that, I've storyboarded. I'm not going to share that bit with you guys because that contains
Probably
everything. But I've storyboarded the major arcs of each character, and as I bring in new characters, built their arc into the story with some player guidance, but also some, our story kind of uniquely brings in the corruption system and stuff. And so I'm always thinking about that and how to incorporate that into the characters as well.
So there's this corruption system, aka I'm going to be able to control some of the aspects of your character.
Exactly.
Cheers.
I mean,
that's some GM shit right there.
Cheers right there. Yeah.
That's some GM shit.
I'm going to railroad you with a system that's in the rules. Yeah.
You walk right into this.
Well, but I will get into, so I like to use OneNote. I'm a pretty electronic GM. And I ran into the issue you ran into, Allard, at the beginning. And so you'll see this. I don't have any notes in OneNote for book one. Yeah. I had all of that. I had the same issue where I was like, well, I'm using my laptop for everything. I finally moved my old tower into our recording room and just record on that now. And so I can actually use my laptop. But you'll routinely see me GMing with 2, if not more, screens up in front of me, because I like to have the PDF of the book. I like to have my OneNote, and I do run most of my encounters, not all, but most through Hero Lab. I feel like it gives me a little bit more on the fly customizability, and I like that it tracks the conditions and stuff for me.
I started using that a little bit more often as well.
Because I start riding by the seat of my pants, and then it's like, oh shit, I forgot I was dazzled last round. Oops.
You know what? And I think maybe I get a little spoiled with that. We've integrated Fantasy Grounds almost entirely into our online play, and especially playing 2E is something we're not really, we don't have years of experience on, but it keeping track of conditions and how those conditions affect other things have given me leeway to care more about description, more about story,
right,
and about that sort of thing. It sounds like you're doing that with Hero Lab too.
Yeah, we use Hero Lab too, and to be able to free up that brain space is so awesome. You know what I mean? To not have to worry about tracking what it means to have this condition. All you gotta do is just click it, and boom, it's all good. Like that really helps, because for we use Roll20, which is similar to Fantasy Grounds in that you have a lot of functionality within Roll20, but we went to Hero Lab for our character sheets, because Hero Lab does a really, really slick job of managing that. But for me, I still use Roll20 to put all my notes into Roll20, so I can be looking at the map and pull up a little note about that map, or I can pull up some information about an NPC or whatever within Roll20. So that's like one less tab that I have to mess with. And
smart.
Yeah. But the digital age has, I honestly don't know now how people played Pathfinder without computers.
A lot of math, a lot more math.
I know, yeah.
Dude, I
don't remember it.
I've got like binders filled with note cards from a decade or more ago that I don't even know what half of them fucking mean anymore, because I just write random shit on them and then keep them in front of me, and Just
I have
ruffle through 'em.
the old, and they're out of print now, but the first edition rules reference cards,
Yeah,
and
those were awesome.
it's like a double deck,
Yeah.
and you know it'll be like you have a card on grappling, and it's double sided because it's fucking
So many
grappling,
rules.
right?
The
Oh my
C
gosh.
card
And-
too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you have like a card for each combat maneuver because that's the way first edition is. But they're really cool. They're kind of fun to use still, like if you want to like flashcard yourself on them, because it's kind of
So
to stay sharp.
I love
Griffin,
flashcarding myself, dude.
You guys,
All the
you
time.
mentioned using OneNote. Why don't you talk a little bit about what that is for those that may not know the beauty of OneNote?
Give me that
Yeah.
screen, buddy.
I'll give you that
never
screen
really
if you're
heard about
ready.
Yeah, when you are.
Yeah, so guys, I thought I might share a little bit of like how I prep and kind of share how OneNote's kind of changed the game for me, just because I like using the PDF for Paizo Adventures, but it really slows stuff down, especially when you need it quickly when you're recording something. I've found that while something like this kind of looks a little bit intimidating, it's really not, especially if you have the PDF. So what I've done here, this is Stairs of the Moon. It's a place that my party encountered a couple of episodes ago. So, minor spoilers, but I'm not really going to tell you what happens unless you read into it. But what I have here,
I'm right here in your episode right now.
what I have here is, this is my book 3 notes. It's broken into different events, different pieces, investigations, information, that kind of stuff. But what this is it's how I organize my maps. And I like to be able to bring the Paizo map directly side by side with the descriptions that Paizo has for their rooms. And if I need to change anything, I can change it right here in my notes. But what I've done for this OneNote is so you can see I have E1, E2, etc. down the side. And these are, the name of the room, how the GM should describe the room, the kind of flavor text there. But then if I pop into E1, I've actually built all of my encounters and put my GM text here. So it links straight over, so I can pop over quickly, and like, this is my GM reference material that's not supposed to be read out loud. I put all my creatures and combat encounters in these red boxes, which is really annoying for people in OneNote because they, for whatever reason, haven't integrated this functionality. So you literally just have to insert a table. It's dumb. You insert a 1-cell table, make it a color. It makes it nice like this. But I've done the same thing for stuff like treasure. I literally just copy in like my trap stat blocks, but I can click right between them and have my trap right there and have the stat block of the trap right there. Or in other bits of my notes, magic items, I'll just pull the D20 description, throw it right in, throw it into a treasure box like this, so I know it's the treasure. And it makes it really quick for me to just sift through my stuff, where I might be taking a couple minutes to scroll through a PDF. And then obviously I can just hop right back to stuff, but this gives you the opportunity to add in while giving yourself a nice format that still has the PDF material in it, which I really like. I mean, I can literally look at my events, like event to, if that one pops up, event, and like I have all of my descriptions and my stuff broken down and the development, so that I can reference it quickly and I'm not sifting through stuff. I think it also works really nicely to kind of segue to Tyler's point with the homebrew stuff. So something that we've done the Evil Interlude stuff, and all of that is homebrew, and all of that has to be both a part of the storyboard because it has to work timeline. It has to make timeline sense, but the prep I did for instance, my evil characters have a 3 or 4 episode trip to Nadal, and the kind of prep I do for that kind of homebrew, when it's homebrew inside of Galarian, is I find everything I possibly can for that setting. So usually a portion of Galarian will have a kind of like a gazetteer or whatever they call it, but a splat book, like a 50-page splat book. So they have that for Nadal. I read that end to end, and then I looked at the Pathfinder Tales, and I think that's been a big part of my prep for some parts of the world. Is getting an author's perspective on the world is very helpful.
Boy,
when you're a
that's
GM
interesting.
and you're trying to weave a story in, and you're trying to, I mean, think of something like the Prince of Wolves features heavily in my AP and my podcast specifically, but reading through Paizo's The Prince of Wolves gives you so much material to run with that as a GM that it's pure idea candy. That there's a whole book on Nadal, which I brought in, like how they treat children is in this book, like all of that. And so you can really draw a lot from some kind of unconventional Paizo stuff, because they've fleshed out their world with a lot of authors that are kind of have different writing styles, whether it's a gazetteer or a Tales book, or I mean, they even have great comics. The comics, actually, like Spiral of Bones, Steve has probably read a million times because it informs Matumbe on our show.
I think bringing up Pathfinder Tales is very interesting, especially since I think we talked a decent amount about how we all prep APs, right? Mm-hmm. There's of course, the homebrew side of things, which I think, some of us have done maybe more than others, but there's something else I want to touch on before we move away from it, which is integrating your party into an AP. And I know Adam talked about it a little bit more with scripted flashback events, and that sort of thing. Allard mentioned, and writing NPCs that are Galarian specific, and finding a way to inject lore into that. If there's one thing, and I know people from YouTube haven't heard this since this is the first video, they didn't see our original stream. We talked a lot about how we love Paizo for what it does and the absolute content dump it does month after month after month. And that's part of the reason why we really love the world. And I feel like we're leaving Adam a little bit out of it because that's all pre-gap shit.
Pre-gap shit. Well, there's good post-gap shit.
There's a pretty good bit of Starfinder lore for sure. I mean, it keeps coming out. It's just a newer system. But I mean, you bring up an interesting point that prep goes beyond just prepping for the game. It goes into researching the world, researching the theme. So part of the prep for running Signal of Screams, which is a space horror cyberpunk kind of thriller themed AP, is goes beyond just reading the books of the AP, but it's okay, I'm going to watch Hellraiser, and I'm going to watch Event Horizon, and I'm going to read Sphere again, and I'm going to do all this kind of inspirational research to get myself in the right mode for this type of campaign. You know what I mean? So before we ran against the Aeon Throne, I watched Inglourious Bastards, and refreshed myself on Firefly, and watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Just to get, hey, here's some of the elements that I want to bring into this thematically. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, is sometimes not talked about part of prep, is being open to to those inspirations.
Dude, you're speaking my language right there. I'll tell you. Did I ever tell you guys about how I prep my players for each book?
No.
You mentioned it on Zone of Truth, I think.
Yeah, I pick thematic movies for each book of the adventure, and I make us all watch it together. So book one was 13 Ghosts and and Poltergeist, and then book 2 was The Green Mile and I like to do a good movie and a shitty movie, so
Okay.
because it keeps them engaged. My players really enjoy shitty movies, but like book 3 was Howling 2, Your Sister's a Werewolf, but also An American Werewolf in London.
So Howling 2 was the good movie in that, right?
Oh yeah,
Obviously.
But I think that's an easy way if you guys can take a night and just watch that as a group instead of recording. And I know we're all so busy at this point, it becomes difficult to do, but that's been a huge part. I mean, I had some of my players had never seen The Green Mile, and playing through book 2 with the Trial of the Beast, it was like so thematically appropriate the entire time that they were just like, I'm so glad we watched The Green Mile afterwards or before we had played that, so we could really get into that that theme.
Well, you want to get into that headspace, right?
Exactly.
I mean, like when I was prepping for Extinction Cursed, I can't even now. Part of this is easy because my wife works in theater, so it's very common that we watch musical theater, whether it's on stage in the time before COVID to
in the before time,
pre-gap, if you will, if you will. But I can't tell you how many times I've watched The Greatest Showman since we've started running Extinction Curse.
I've never seen it. Is it good?
It's a Hugh Jackman.
I've heard of it, but
it's an amazing. I think it's an amazing show. I really do.
Check it out.
And even like getting down to like, and again, this is just me getting into the headspace. One of the things I did recently, and I was late to recording for it, and I know my guys would give me shit for this if they knew I was outing myself on it. But when Hamilton came out on June 3rd, we had a big night for that, and I had just like engrossed myself in it, and finding out how those things are portrayed and like thinking about how to describe what I'm seeing on stage is how I do a lot of my, again, getting into that headspace and preparation. So yes.
Yeah, I feel you. Going back to the Gypsy Caravan, part of the show that I put on involved a lion show. And so I watched a bunch of videos on YouTube about how it ended up being like tiger tamers in the circus and the little tricks that they do. And then
so you're a certified big cat tamer now?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Just call him Joe Exotic.
Carol Baskins just rang me up the other day, and I could volunteer for up to 80 hours a week. So
you get a blue shirt.
Is that why your basement's completely brick? Do you keep the cats down there too?
Yeah, they can't scratch these walls as easily.
I do want to kind of touch back on. I think we've all brought it up in various ways, but the importance of bringing your players in on the prep. I really, really think that is important. And it can be a difficult balance because you don't want to give away the story, and you don't want to railroad them, or you don't want to set up a situation to where, okay, this has to happen, but there are certain elements that you can set up to make those moments of chance deliver so much more, and also get your players invested in the story that you're trying to tell as the GM, or the world that you're trying to create, because really the story is the players to tell, but you're creating the world and kind of the conflict that they have to deal with. And the more that you get them involved in that and have them kind of have a better understanding of what the conflict is going to be, the characters that they create and how they develop them is going to be so much better on how they play to that. You're basically giving them a card in an improv situation, like, okay, here's your motivation, here's your little brief to go with for the next couple of weeks or whatever of the session. And I really do think that makes a huge difference.
That's something I've really enjoyed about bringing my players in as a party, a separate party that is directly working with the bad guys of the campaign, is that it gives them some agency, and it fucking makes my prep a lot more. So I don't necessarily recommend it, but it gives them agency in how the entire arc of the story is working on both sides. And that's really cool because I can pull those levers, and I have to pull them in because I'm like, this is your character. Like, I need you to role play this situation. So something will be like building up to something, and I'll be like, I need a little bit of time with Emily, or I need a little bit of time with Steve. Like, we need a powwow for 30 minutes and then we'll be right back. And I think it's, in a recorded game, everybody understands, like, yeah, you're going to take that time, you're going to do whatever. But it's added so much flavor that I couldn't have done alone, because they have these interesting and dynamic characters that are bad guys that are just in there. So
yeah, if you don't get the players involved, you're robbing yourself of narrative surprise.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, and you are, as a GM, all of us, we're still players at the table too. And so it's nice to give the players some agency in the overarching story so that you can be surprised, or you can have those moments of narrative payoff that the players deliver for you, just like you're delivering back to them with whatever you got cooking on in your mind. And so again, I think if story is what is driving your adventure, then the players need to be involved in that story in some form or fashion, at least having an idea of the general theme in the feel of where it's going to go, so you can make that story even better for them. And when you do that, they're going to give you so many wonderful surprises and like moments that's all on them giving it to you. Like, you're sitting there interacting with them as an NPC, not sure where they're gonna go with it, and you're actually getting to play for a moment because you've given them that much agency.
Yeah, one of my biggest tips is, if you don't have like a player that is writing a bunch of backstory, and obviously it could go both ways. A player can write a kind of too much backstory and it's hard to bring back.
Yes.
But like, if you have a player that's a little bit shy about writing backstory, or a little bit hesitant to write a bunch of backstory, it doesn't have to be backstory. You can lean into something, like, you can notice trends in how that player is playing, and that should be a part of your prep too. Take a note, like, this guy, he's a fighter, but he really likes making survival checks. Well, I should like kind of lean into that a little bit and see where that goes, because that might become a defining characteristic of that character that you didn't need a written backstory for, that kind of naturally plays out. And I think that's also important, because I don't always come to the table expecting like extravagant backstories that I can tie in everywhere. That's not always the case. It's certainly not always the case at home games at all. But I think your job as a GM is also to be observant and to take note of that kind of thing, because it pays off just as much.
I think player involvement is big, and it's not always, and I'm not going to disagree with you on this, it's not necessarily always on the GM to give that spotlight to the players who aren't taking the spotlight either.
Certainly, yeah.
Sometimes some of the best players that I've ever played with are the ones that, as another player, not as the GM, put that spotlight on that player that isn't involved as much, or isn't giving as much RP, because for some reason it feels more it feels like it has more weight when it's coming from a fellow player pushing or them shining the spotlight on a fellow PC, because to a certain extent, when you're doing it as a GM, that's what you're doing all the time. You're pointing the spotlight at the PC, who the NPC is spotlighting. There's going to be different people who pay attention to different players based on different reasons. I mean, I don't want to give too much away into the Extinction Curse game that we have, but one of my players was playing somebody who is very charismatic and has a high charisma score, and for all intents and purposes, between the four players, would be the person that all of the NPCs would go to for some sort of involvement or some sort of drawing out what their plans were. And that player made very plain to the NPCs that I don't do that anymore. Fuck off. Right. So it was interesting to not only showcase how they wanted to shift the focus from what was expected of them to then that bringing in somebody who wasn't expected to be the focus in a different situation. Right. And I always think those are interesting things that can happen during improv at a table too.
I think
so put a star next to improv on our big list, because apparently that's
been like 3 or 4 times.
I'll give kudos to Adam, because I've played under him. He does an excellent job at getting characters that are comfortable in certain parts of the party to interact with the other parts of the party, which does allow for that kind of good characters bringing stuff out in each other type of role play. I don't know if you've ever had a party where it's like 2 people are buddy and other 2 people are buddy, and you don't really have a lot of crossover. He does a very good job. Yeah,
like working
exactly.
Side by side with each other, but not crossing over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He does a very good job at making sure there are situations where different matchups happen. And I think that helps.
To bring it back to prep, that's part of the prep, is reflecting on the previous sessions and saying, okay, here's some things that went really, really well. Here's some things that didn't go great. Here's some things that the players are interested in. And here's some opportunities that I don't think the players realize that they have. And thinking about all those things as you go into your next session, and bringing that to your prep to beyond just getting all your stats in order and all your encounters in order, is like, what does this next session need to keep the momentum going or to rejuvenate it, And most of that, I think that goes back to what I was saying before, is so much of my prep happens like this in my head.
Yep.
That I'm just thinking about it all the time. I'm thinking about, okay, this is what needs to happen on the story. This is what needs to happen for this player. This is what needs to happen to make the momentum better. This is where the pacing needs to go. I feel like the party is kind of getting cliquey, and I need to break that up. I need to present a situation that makes them do it without saying, hey guys, stop being so cliquey. It's like, here's a situation that's going to force these other characters to interact. You know what I mean? Because it's important to those 2 characters or those 3 characters, as opposed to the normal setup, and prep is so much more than the book, it's just so much more than that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of prep being so much more than the book, I'm a little interested to hear, especially Allard's prep for less players.
Yeah.
Because I think you're the only one of us that has a party of less than 4. So I'm just curious, like, is it maybe make some of the GMs in here less worried about their small party? Because I know a lot of people do worry about that. Like, I have a big party, I have a small party. Tyler, you're the opposite end of the spectrum. You have a bigger party. Like, if you guys could talk about the prep that goes into that, I think that would be, that's super valuable for folks.
I think right away, knowing that I was like down 1 from the average party size, I wanted to think of a story reason to maybe incorporate another person, and that's where a relationship comes in. So we have a 4-person party, even though there are only 3 players, and it's a character that I was able to continue voicing and just have a player run for combat, so I didn't have to keep track of that one as well. And like, when you do stuff like that, and I've talked to my players about it, like, I just gave 1 person twice as many turns a combat versus the other 2.
Yeah.
And that's something that might not be fair to do to the other players if they don't agree to it or feel like they aren't doing as much. But then I feel like I have the ability with 3 people to focus on each of them and kind of give them their own thing. And I have probably done it more for Dane and Eli's character, just because like I live with him, so it's easy to bounce ideas off, and I have a feel for his character because he talks to me about it more often in person. But I definitely pay attention to what the players are going for and what they're interested in. And when I get those little hooks, those little ideas, I'll think about it and have it ready for next session. Maybe if I don't feel like it's right, maybe a session down the line. So it's just being willing to adjust my prep for how my players are going about the situation in general. I really don't have a problem with a 3-person party. It hasn't really been much of a challenge. I have loaded on them probably more gold at the start, just because I know what my players like for rewards, and just in case I don't want to.
Got to get the gear.
Yeah, you gotta get that gear.
Gotta get the gear, and I'm able to cushion them with better rewards, so I know what I can throw at them before accidentally killing a party that's too small. And at this point, I've only made encounters more difficult than they're supposed to be, and time again they've survived them. So I guess I just gotta keep loading on creatures and do encounters and keep an idea of what my players want to do with the situations.
You ever find that with Second Darkness and not in particular, but I'm playing an old AP2 that because Paizo has grown and first edition is so big, that some of the options your players might have taken are never encountered or never thought of in the book because they're newer than the book is. Yeah, I've definitely run into that with the Occultist, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, the Occultist is probably not supposed to be there. Yeah, I think I have a Sorcerer, an Investigator, an Inquisitor, and then the romantic interest is a Rogue. So half the party is kind of geared more towards it, even though it's an Unchained Rogue, and this is 3.5, so technically it's a whole different ball game anyway. But as far as just things that have been broken because they just have a class feature, I don't think I've really run into it so much, besides the Investigator just having access to high rolling knowledge checks.
Yeah, just when your player decides to throw a drop in there because of all the skills he has, Investigators, fucking
Investigators,
monster.
Occultists, I can imagine do that for you, Griff. I haven't run into that necessarily with second edition.
My players forget to do knowledge rolls all the time.
Oh, mine don't.
Well, since it's all Steve can do, that's what he decides to do.
Yeah, that is all he can do.
See, I have the opposite.
That is
problem.
his biggest skill,
Yeah, I have the opposite problem. I will prod my players to make knowledge checks and be like, I wonder if the monster is weak to this sort of thing. And I'm like, you could spend an action to recall knowledge. And they're like, nah, I'll just swing again.
See, I get it in 2E. It costs an action. It's free as fuck.
Yeah.
In Starfinder and 1E,
That's true.
I just don't understand.
Free as a bird now.
Yeah,
oh, man.
I can get those knowledge checks rolled out, y'all. Damn.
It is well.
There's something that we all have kind of skirted around. And I think we're ready to take our break here pretty quickly, and we'll probably I'll give you guys the break to think about this before we come back. But I kind of have a question to pose to all of us, and it's something that I think every GM should really think about, is the player behind the character and how the players interact with each other and how they have their certain expectation with how they're going to play with one another. Having that table social contract and understanding what that social contract is between you and the players and everybody around the table as a whole really plays into all of this prep, right? And I think that's something that we should certainly, think about here and touch into a little bit. For everybody who's sitting at the Discord watching us, if you've got any questions, now is the time to pop them in. I've been pinning them all to the chat. We're going to get to those when we get back from our break here, but we're going to take 5 minutes. And when we get back, we'll be addressing those questions. Until then, have another drink.
Yeah. Or 2.
Yeah, it's happy hour after all.
5 drinks minimum.
It's the only happy hour in town where you don't have to have a mask.
Yeah, it's the best one.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, all you ravenous role players, you devious dice rollers. I think that we've got ourselves a very interesting second half here. We've got some really fun questions that have popped up into the Discord channel. And just a reminder for anybody who's watching this on YouTube, if you get done watching the segment, you think, man, I really would like to ask these guys some questions, join us on our Discords. We've got them all posted on the YouTube channel. Everybody's got them on their Twitters and everything. And we love interacting with you guys. So if you have anything that you want to get out to us, even just on a normal everyday, I think I don't want to talk for all of us here, but we love interacting with our listeners.
Oh, yeah. Go talk for all of us.
You don't know me.
Yeah.
Shove those words in my mouth.
I hate you guys. I'm going into my cave after this.
So
I'm already in my cave.
before we get to the Discord questions here, I want to talk a little bit about that question I posed before we started, talking about, player interaction, what the table means and what your personalities and how they interact. Does anybody want to pick up anything there?
Yeah, go ahead. And I think, this is especially important for me and Adam recently. One of the things you have to know about your players kind of dictates what you can and can't run. And that's kind of, you mentioned a social contract, but especially when you run a horror campaign like I'm doing and like Adam is now doing, it's very important to know your players' limits. I mean, there have been times when I'm willing to spoil something that I was thinking of in the future, thinking of doing, because I need to know that it's okay with one or more of my players. And I think that's the most important thing when you do horror. If you push a limit too far, it stops being fun. And I think you walk the line in almost every Paizo adventure path. If you, if you're talking about running Paizo adventure paths, all of them have some seedy elements, I would say, subjects. And usually Paizo is pretty good about players guiding a content warning when it's warranted. But I'll bring something up that's not horror. I mean, all of the hubbub, and rightfully so, about Agents of Edgewatch, Paizo's newer AP. That's so important that you have to know your players' personalities, and you have to bring that in front of them. Something where you're potentially going to play a cop analog in an adventure path. Yeah, you better read the room, man, because that's a touchy subject for everyone right now, and especially asking somebody to invest 2 years of their time in an adventure that they're maybe not excited for or even comfortable with.
Just fully on board. Yeah, 100%. I mean, you're going to breach those weird subjects. You're going to breach those touchy subjects. If you know your players a little bit more ahead of time, it's going to make a difference. And even beyond that, having a way, and I personally really like how second edition laid this out in the core rule book. And it's a rule that any RPG system or tabletop RPG system can take, is just the red card rule. When you're breaching that subject, when you're breaching that line of comfortability, giving the player a tool to just, hold something up and say, hey, this is beyond where I'm willing to go, some sort of visual cue. You can just, as a GM, just move past it, get beyond it, so that you're not, breaching that person's comfort level.
Yeah, I think that was really important with us running evil interlude stuff because everyone was going to be an evil character. But, everybody at the table kind of knows each other, but they're not really sure how far each other are going to go in something like that. And so having, exactly to your point, kind of a red card rule, but more so a like, hey, I didn't really like that. Like, I really don't think I think we should, I mean, I was fully on board with, we should retake that. I don't like, I feel like that went too far. I didn't like that. I know that the whole table's not like that, but I didn't like that. Or like, hey, we need, even though everybody was okay, we need a trigger warning for this, this, and this. I think, especially as a podcaster, you need to have that open table for everyone to be able to talk about any feelings they're feeling, because the last thing you want is somebody to feel like shit about something that you all put out without anyone knowing.
Yeah, I think even
especially if you're putting it out to the world, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
as a
100%.
podcaster, we have a little bit more of a, it's more difficult for us to toe that line, because even though, like, my table has been playing together for upwards of 7 years now, I know where my players' lines are. Spoiler warning, they don't have one. But knowing the types of personalities makes a huge difference. Like, for example, I've got two very heavy role players at my table, and two that just aren't as much, and something that where I have to have no effort to bring half my party in on role playing, where in the other half I have to, reach out to them to role play. And that's not a bad thing. That's just how they play, and that's fine. We all understand that. And it's a dynamic that you have to be sensitive to. You have to be empathetic to.
Do you ever ask your role players to do that, kind of like bringing in the non-ones on some of the stuff?
There have been a few instances where I'll like warn some of my non-role players. Like, I don't, unlike we talked about before the break, you guys like talking about, giving little bits away to your players so that they're more involved and ready for a situation. Whereas I don't personally like doing that. I like things to be a surprise at the table. I spring things on my players all the time.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing, is you're asking us what our prep is in regards to being aware of the players behind the PCs, right? At my table, there are some players that I absolutely want to surprise, catch off guard, get them completely like in a place where they didn't know what happened. And there's some players that I know would that's not fun for them. And so my responsibility is to individualize those experiences the best I can while still unifying it as a group,
Yeah, for sure.
And so like the players that I have that are good storytellers are also the ones that want to be involved in the story. You know what I mean? Like, in the sense of wanting to have an idea of what their character's motivation should be, so they know how to play their character towards whatever thing is happening. Because for them, it's a situation where, well, had I known that this is what you had planned, I would have rather played my character differently. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm like, oh shit, well, you now, because of like my, oh, look at me, look how clever I am at this big surprise I dropped on you. You now feel invalidated for the last 4 sessions because I didn't involve you in it, knowing that that's something that's important to you as a player.
I have heard, we hang out every weekend, my crew. I've heard that spiral enough times where I have to, now I have to, like, exactly what you're saying, bring that in, because I don't want that end of it either. That's not fun either. Feeling like you didn't get to say everything you wanted to say or do everything you wanted to do because you were caught off guard.
Right. And so, like, that's the thing. I think, going back to your original question, Tyler, is knowing your players and knowing how they like to play the game and how they like to be involved in it, and set up a situation in your game where that player and how they like to play the game, they get to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'll give a very, very quick example because we do need to get to listener questions. But like with season 2, there's a new character introduced, and I have a player who isn't so much interested in the setup of what Signal Scream starts with. You know, like they're not really worried about chilling with all the NPCs. That's not who their character is. That's not who the player is. You know, like that's fine. Like it's like being true to who that character is and how they like to play the game. So I created a mystery for that player to solve because I knew that he wouldn't enjoy what was presented by the AP at the beginning. So I got him hooked into it, but at simultaneously bringing in a new character into the show. And so like I knew that player would be interested in the mystery of finding out who this character is. And so like that was his hook into the new adventure, you know, because as written, there's nothing to hook this character or player into that adventure. Right.
Yeah, that
and that I think is a pretty solid example of what you're talking about, Tyler, is knowing the dynamics of your table and prepping for those dynamics, you know.
Allard, I want to hear about your table.
You don't want to hear about my table.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. You're
I
the
do.
only,
You have
like,
candles
table-
all over it and a
Yeah.
decanter and everything. I want to hear about it.
At my table, well, we have all been close friends for 7 years now, and we didn't start playing until 2 or 3 years into that friendship. So like we kind of got to know each other and our boundaries before ever playing. So I feel like I almost have I don't really think about it very much because I kind of just inherently have an idea of where my players like wouldn't, or the line that they wouldn't like to be crossed. And I think for the most part, it's just like not not being a bad person, but they in
It's a good
general
start.
It's
It's
a
a
good
good
start.
start.
but in general, they don't have like, I haven't come across or they haven't voiced any sort of any content, like dark content topics that they're not willing to peruse in. And I think that tabletop role-playing games are cool in that way because it's fun, interesting to be able to get these kind of morality checks in situations where like you as an actual person aren't going to be hurt by them, but still try to form an idea about them in a somewhat logical way.
I like
So
your
I've definitely
morality
just-
checks.
Yeah, I've definitely just like thrown my players had them walk into a situation or presented them or like neatly decided that this situation was going to be over here instead, just to see one, what their characters are going to do, but two, how them as players are going to think about the situation. And from that, I can kind of get a gauge on what they're willing to go along with. And I don't know, I think that we're not horror or anything like that, but I'm trying to keep it on a dark kind of side of things, a kind of
Yeah,
gritty,
well, we're GMs. We all like the
Sure.
dark side of things.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
True.
Always look on the dark side of
you
life.
gotta make them be scared that they're gonna lose their characters.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
that-
Oh yeah.
All right.
Isn't that the biggest thing? Like, we are all Pathfinder GMs for a reason. We run these Pathfinder podcasts for a reason, and it's because
Paizo.
we all yeah,
Paizo.
well, Paizo. Yes.
So Adam with the correct.
But it's because we all, well, no, I was just talking specifically Pathfinder here because we all like the risk of death.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fair.
Got him.
Yeah.
Got
it.
him.
But yes, yes, the Paizo, you know, we run Pathfinder because for the most part it's easier to kill your players.
Well, the
Or kill
stakes
your
are
player's
higher. Let's put
character.
it that way.
And
Let's put it that
your
way.
players
Stakes are higher.
because
The stakes
if they
are
suck at
higher.
that,
I feel like we're all
yeah.
shitting on Adam over here.
Yeah, the rules.
I just did
ground-
for a second. Starfinder's tough. when you know.
Yeah, level 1
He
to
gets
3.
to
it's
shit
really
on me
hard.
because I'm his GM. You
Yeah,
know, like
exactly.
he
That's
gets a
true.
little bit of shit talk.
I get a little bit of pull. Then
Yeah.
you know, when I eventually GM him through something, he's gonna just
You
sock
know
me
I'm
in the
related
mouth.
to you.
he's gonna reach through. You won't think we're in the same room, but he's gonna reach through that side of the
Wham.
screen and just punch me in the side of the face.
I was talking about research. I watched The Ring a bunch of times just so I can figure out how to do that. You know.
There you
Yeah,
go.
you know.
Listen, we
it's
got
important.
some listener questions to get to. We could talk
we
all
do.
night about this. So let's get into it. I'll start. I know Tyler, you have the pinned messages pulled up too, so maybe we'll go back and forth on this. But start with Big Mood. Ask a question. If your players had to take an NPC with them on a quest from your story, who would you wish they would bring? Hashtag honor the NPCs. Hashtag GM favorites.
Oh boy.
I could start because I have an easy answer. My character is already taking the NPC I wanted her to take in her brain.
Cheater.
Hell yeah.
I did, you know, corruption's
Got it.
cheating. It's
I can't
GM
wait.
on easy mode.
I
baby.
can't wait. I can't wait. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. For me, I would love if they had taken Bright with them.
Oh
much
my
more,
god, you would have
yeah.
had so much fun with that.
That would
Yeah.
have been fun.
Yeah, much more so than Hash. I love Hash, and you know, slight spoilers here, guys. But come on, you know, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
But for me, I think I would have had the most fun having Bright with them in Aurelos, because my God, Bright interacting with Mergelberg. Come on.
I see you there. All right, I see you there.
Come on. Hey, that's
And
all I'm
for
gonna
all
say
those
about that.
YouTubers that don't know all of our stories, it sounds like Adam had an aneurysm.
Break,
I did. Yeah. Truly.
Oh,
That's what you
man.
get here at GM Happy Hour. Vague references to shit you don't know about.
Yeah, only in the second hour though, because
Get educated.
I think for my group, it's interesting for my group because they always go back to the same place. They always go back to the circus. They always, you know, go back and interact with the same NPCs. I think I would like to see more interaction on my end from Elysia and Mr. Tickles on our two animal tamers on the show. I'd like to see that.
I mean, Mr. Tickles by name alone should win
Seriously.
this.
Yeah. But no, that's the opportunity that that particular NPC and their animal companion has brought, and actually the active, I'm not going to say active rejection, but the active awkwardness that occurs actually plays into the PC that I'm talking about very specifically, and about how they interact with other people. So it's kind of a for the best sort of situation, but boy, I'd love to see Mr. Tickles out in an adventure.
I think.
What about you, Allard?
I think for me, they have taken the person that I wanted to go with them, being
Yeah,
as
I mean,
got the person in a
truly.
relationship with them.
Yeah, you made that you made that happen.
You just, you went full on in on the let's
Like
GM player relationship. Let's go.
Get one in. We need an extra person in this party. I know the way to one of their hearts. It's just being edgy looking.
Talk about knowing your players.
GM call out. Forgot about
GM
that.
call out.
Hashtag GM
GM
call
call
out.
it. Yeah, take a drink.
yeah. Cheers. Yeah.
Oh man. I've got
All
a
right, so next-
question. I got a question
go
that's
ahead.
pinned actually, because 10 Lawn Gnomes jumped in right into my Discord and asked this one almost a week and a half ago.
All right.
But wants us to talk a little bit about, and I think Allard, this one might be more of a question for you. How do we specifically build and or modify encounters, and how might we change those encounters depending on party composition?
Let's see. I've done it before by adding an elemental, not like fire energy damage, but an elemental effect like a strong wind or the waves being too big and interacting with the combat. That just kind of makes a combat more interesting in a lot of ways.
Environmental factors are fun.
100%.
That was going to be
dude.
my answer. Environmental
Nice.
effects.
Took it.
And I
And
think,
also just give them more people to lose to if they can do it.
yeah, I think I'll take that question too because I'm running a 5-person party versus the 4 that most adventure paths are balanced towards. And believe it or not, I don't add extra enemies to the encounters. Really, the only thing I do to account for 5 players is add a little HP stack to all the enemies. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have the most optimally built players in our party.
Tell that to Mike.
That's a hashtag GM call out
Oh, GM call out.
Oh, GM call out.
Yeah.
Suck, Emily.
Yeah.
You've been called out.
But Mike is like super optimized, but then a couple of the others not so much. And so I'm not interested in adding an extra turn in the action economy unless it's absolutely necessary, right? Like unless okay, this is like a boss fight where that action economy is really important, mostly I just add a little bit of HP. My general rule of thumb, and I can't believe I'm saying this because there's so many of my players here listening, but I generally do a 20% average of the party's HP and add that to the enemy's HP.
That's a good
I
baseline.
like that.
Yeah,
that's a good statistic,
that's static.
actually.
That's static. See,
Yeah, it's like a simple hard line to where I don't have to overthink it or anything like that. It's and I think it balances out pretty well. I mean, based on 70 plus episodes, I think it's worked out okay.
I've never heard of that tactic. I like that.
I do too. I really do. Having that static increase. See, when I was running first edition, my go-to, because and maybe this is obvious, the podcast is called Min-Maxed, I always had a highly optimized party that I was going up against as a GM. And instead of taking the HP as written in the stat block, I'd find out what that monster's max HP could be, and I just cranked it up to that.
Yep.
That's what I did.
Take those to the D8s and they're all 8.
Yep, exactly.
That's what I did prior to the podcast when we were playing 5e games. I would always do the top, whatever their max HP could be. That was what it was. Because I've always had more than 4 players. At one point when we were doing 5e, I had I think 8 PCs in one party at some point.
You're crazy, man.
That was that was not regular.
Okay, that's
5 too many.
But what was regular was 6 PCs in the party. So I've
rough.
always had large groups in the games that I've run, and so when I was in 5e, I would always just do the max HP for all of the monsters. But with Pathfinder or Starfinder, with the Paizo math system, I felt like it required a little bit more granular touch, and I found that 20% works. It works.
Interesting.
I like it.
What it does is it gives every player an opportunity to get their cool thing off in a combat.
And the bad guys.
Yeah, and the bad guys. But
I mean,
we're
the
not
bad guy's a
giving all the
player.
secrets
He's
away,
a player.
Allard.
He's a
Shit.
player.
Sucks when a bad guy doesn't get their cool thing off.
All right,
Exactly.
next question.
Yes.
We're good for the next question?
Well, I wanted to answer that one.
No, you don't get to, Griffin.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't care.
Down.
I don't
No,
think
go
I've had
ahead.
an encounter as written since book 2. So
Well, I think that's
it's because I'm
Well,
homebrewing
how's
shit
them
at this
on?
point.
I was
but
about to say I think that's pretty obvious, but that might only be obvious to GMs.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a good
I've
point.
never read it, but
yeah,
That's a good point.
it's certainly I'm prepping my encounters with the rest of my shit now. I'm not book encountering at least 50% of it. And if I am book encountering it, I'm changing it in some weird way so that it fits the theme that I'm trying to do. I mean, I'll take my earliest example, the Splatter Man fucking bursting somebody with bleed damage. He's a ghost.
Oh, fucking
It wasn't
Splatter
written
Man.
it wasn't written into the goddamn stat block, but it's cool and it's cinematic and it's the last fight. Of course I'm going to do something like that.
Mhm.
My biggest barometer is how many encounters I think they're going to get to in a day. And if it's low, if it's like 2, then I'm changing those. And I'm making it, because something for radio shouldn't be fighting. The biggest
You should
culprit
never
for
have
me
trash
is,
mobs on radio.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for me has been book 3 is written with so many goddamn werewolf fights. Just make 2 and make the better. Make 2 and make the better. That's
Right,
all.
like-
That's all you got to do.
I learned that lesson in book 2 of Aeon Throne, is that like there's just so many encounters that like aren't really anything but resource drainers.
Exactly.
You know
And
what
I'm
I
all
mean?
for
Like-
streamlining it. And so I
Yeah.
think make the encounters harder. Don't make a 5 encounter slog that is the same 3 whatevers over
Yeah,
and
like,
over again. It
There's only
sucks.
so many Aeon guards that you can fight before it gets boring as shit.
And even outside of a podcast, like that's not fun either. I don't want to spend
Right.
all night
Yeah.
fighting the same 3 things 3
Right.
times. It's dumb.
I think I've thrown one trash encounter at my party, and it was specifically to allow them to show off their new abilities.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, and I think
Yeah,
that's something you
yeah.
should do from time to time, is give them an easy combat to win,
For
They gotta
sure.
feel
so
good.
that they actually feel the power increase. So, you know, like
Yeah.
if every time they level up, the next thing that they face is harrowing, they never feel their power. You know what I mean? So, like, it's important to give them a fight from time to time where they just stomp it. You know,
By the
like-
same token,
Mhm.
don't do that in a horror AP.
No,
I could feel you
doesn't
there.
work as well.
I mean,
It
it's just
doesn't. It doesn't
like
work as
unless
well.
unless it's like a moment of calm, in which case I've done it too, and I totally get it. But do not let up on the tense nature of any sort of horror adventure.
There should never be a point where your players feel comfortable when you're doing a horror.
Yeah.
campaign.
It just
You know. All right. Next question. This comes from Emily from Southern Tomfoolery, my alma mater.
oh, your alma
That's
mater.
what we
You've
call it.
graduated from it now.
I graduated from
Wow.
Southern Tomfoolery. Yeah. Well, no, don't worry, Josh. I didn't leave. I am just now a contributing alumni. The question from Emily is there a certain thing that you each do to get into the GM mindset, whether that is getting into creative headspace for prep work or pregame hype?
Oh yeah.
Griffin, let's start with you.
Alcohol, actual play, actually drunk.
No way.
Podcast. Could you
No
believe
shit.
it?
I couldn't.
But actually, yes. I do when I GM. I like to have my prepping done, and I like to just kind of zen out. I think a lot of us are gonna have like at least some sort of a similar like. I like to zen out a little bit. I like to I'll still have. I always say the perfect GM prep: 2 drinks before you start and a drink for every hour you're GMing. Perfect level of loose. You don't lose the adventure, at least for my tolerance. But I imagine most of you listening, probably are similar.
Well, most of us GMing anyway.
Yeah, at least you guys GMing. But yeah, I'll listen to music. I'll listen to thematic things. I think I like to, when I prep, I like to be outside. I like to bring my laptop outside when I can, when it's nice outside, because it makes me feel like less of a dork, I guess. Right? I don't like to be in my cave.
Whatever.
I don't like to
Whatever
prep in my
convinces you,
cave.
man.
Whatever you have to tell yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't like to prep in my cave. I like to prep outside in the, whether
I
it's
like to
patio
prep at
furniture or
work.
whatever.
I like to prep at work. Like
Yeah, when I
any
can-
good GM does.
When I can
you
get
know?
paid to prep, I do that.
Hell
Yes,
yeah.
of course.
Hell yeah.
For me, my pregame, I'm not going to say hype, but ritual, I'll say, is to pace. I live in a shotgun house in New Orleans, so I pace from the back to the front, to the back to the front, a good 30 minutes before every session. I definitely have a drink, much like Griffin. I think that's important to. That goes back to what I was saying earlier about the equivalency to this versus music, where a drink helps lubricate, any of your anxiety, and get into a space where you feel comfortable improvising. Because when I sit down, as I said, it's important to me that when I sit down, whatever happens, happens. and I don't always succeed at that. It's something that I continually work on as a GM, because I think GMs are inherently control freaks. That's why they're GMs. And so, like, it's not easy to let go, but that is my goal every time, is to let go. And for me, a drink helps with that, but also just remembering that I'm going into this to have fun, and that to tell myself, you've read this over and over, you've thought about this more than you should have, you know what I mean? Like, just relax and have a good time. But there are multiple times before we press record, I'm like, hey guys, I feel like I'm gonna throw up right now.
Episode 100 about shit my pants.
Yeah.
There is in the chat. You did just call all of us out as GMs, so I think that still counts.
Yeah, I saw that. I posted it.
GM call out. Yep. Yep.
Is that Kyle? Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle. I think the thing that I do to kind of get myself ready, it's a twofer. I like getting myself in the headspace with atmospheric music, and I argue with myself in NPC voices.
I love that.
Yeah, I'll decide who's going to be talking that night, and I'll just argue with myself in whatever NPC voice that I need to be in. And I'm not arguing with one NPC to another NPC or another NPC to the player. I'll argue with myself as an NPC out loud in that NPC voice.
Does anyone else miss their commute because of that? Because I used to do that on all of my commutes. I was just like, yeah, it's me.
Oh, no. There was a time there with COVID that I wasn't going to work, and therefore I wasn't listening to podcasts. Again, I use my work time very efficiently. So when I wasn't listening to podcasts, I was getting behind. So now my commute to work is entirely dedicated to catching up on podcasts and not dedicated to what it was supposed to be, which is me talking to myself in weird voices.
Yes.
You just got to practice.
And it sucks because as that was happening, we were coming into an AP where I needed 16 new character voices.
That's too many voices.
That's way too many voices.
That's rough.
I love Signal of Screams. I've been so excited to run this AP since before we started this podcast. Like, we started this podcast so I could run this AP, right? Like, Against the Aeon Throne is the prologue to Signal of Screams in my mind.
Interesting.
But
has it always been like that for you?
Always.
Like from day one?
From day one, the reason that we're running Aeon Throne is because I wanted to give them a good reason to be leveled enough to do Signal Screams, and where we had a whole season of backstory that I could tap into for Signal Screams.
Playing the long game, Adam. I'm impressed.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's important for Signal of Screams, though. Like, if you polled the Paizo audience, those that played Aeon Throne with characters and then played Signal of Screams, I think are going to be 10 times more satisfied with Signal of Screams than those that just jumped into it.
100%.
What does that start out at? Just a higher level in general?
It starts out at level 7, which is where Aeon Throne ends, is at level 7. And so, like, yeah, absolutely. Like, this has been what I've been looking forward to from the get-go. And then COVID happened. And all of my time that I thought I was going to have to, like, talk to myself disappeared because, I'm married. And neither my wife or myself had anywhere to go. And so there wasn't a lot of, like, alone time for me to practice these voices.
I just imagine, hey, baby, I'm going to disappear into the room for an hour and talk to myself. Is that cool?
You don't talk to her in them?
Listen, man.
you need to ask Kaylee about some stories.
Listen,
because when I get drunk, those voices come out.
There's not a lot to do. There's not a lot to do in quarantine, and there's some things that I really like to do that I didn't want to go away. And so talking in weird character voices would have affected that. And so I had to make the choice that I had to make,
Just gotta
that
figure
being
out a
said-
situation that enhances.
You're right.
That's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, but the reality is that I think I figured it out. I feel good about it. I've been thinking about this from day one, before day one. You know what I mean? Like this is we're in the space that I want to be in right now. Like I'm so pumped about where we're at now. And if prep is the name of the game for this episode, season 1 was prep for season 2.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah,
buddy. What about you, Allard? I'm curious to hear.
What I do, I like to gather myself a good little amount of pesh.
Pass out for 4 hours.
And I just want to I just get into my head more and more, and I talk to the people around me.
In fact, I'm going to dip off screen
around
for
that.
just a second.
This is perfectly right. And then right before the session happens, I just start babbling nonsense for a while and try to get people to talk. And then I struggle for about 5 to 10 minutes into the podcast. And then I remember the things that I read previously and really, really start to get in the groove.
So you've got like that 5-minute buffer where like we're all at the table, I'm talking about shit, and that wasn't real. Now we'll hit record.
Yep.
Got it. And I've done that before. I've actually thrown out entire like hours, like an hour worth of recording that I did because I got halfway through it and I was like, no, that's not what I was thinking. Guys, you just have to come back. I'm sorry, shut up. We're going back to the beginning.
We're starting this over.
We're starting over.
What always fucks me up is the female voices. I'm not the best at. I'm usually pretty good at voices, but like I default to Mrs. Doubtfire, and every time I'm like, hello, fuck,
damn it,
guys, let's take that again. I'm gonna do a different voice.
I can't wait till you all get to hear my succubus. That's I'm really proud of my succubus.
Right.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna
really
take
like
up.
my what?
Oh no, go.
I really like my being able to do the voice of a priestess of Calistria. Dan, darling, will you come over here?
Oh, I loved your Calistrian
fun-
princess, man.
How much fun is the Eastern European voice? Like for real,
It's pretty
though?
goddamn fun. Why do you think Emily on your podcast does it all the goddamn
Oh, I know
time?
why she
She
does
is
it.
so good at it too.
That's a
Props
GM,
to Emily.
that's a hashtag GM call out.
GM call out.
Have
baby.
a GM call
Oh,
out. This is a
everybody
positive
loves
one.
Ziva because she has the most interesting voice. Yeah. You went for the low hanging fruit there, Emily.
Oh shit!
Love you.
Oh man. I'm gonna pick up with Kyle had a question. He wanted to ask if we could delve a little bit into methods that we use to tie character backstories together while simultaneously tying them to the plot.
Ooh, that's a very interesting one.
I kind of have an example off the bat.
Go,
Yeah,
hey,
go.
Allard. We're all about you talking right now.
So right up front, we in episode 1 we kind of hinted at it was that all the characters had met each other or had some relation, or at least that 2 of them had just right away as they all kind of happened to collaborate at one blackjack table on that fateful gambling night. And then like I had a moment where I knew that they all could interact in, and we had talked a little bit how the 2 characters might have met because they both grew up in the same town. And later on, maybe like 17 episodes in, it was at the end of a combat where I was like, I think I have a little cutscene in me right here. And so I was able to go and show how everybody met. And then the end of that story matched up with the moment that we left off after the last episode had ended.
I like that. No, and it's I don't want to assume for you here, but you had that cutscene in your head, but you just slipped it in at that moment, or did you improv that cutscene?
That one was written. That one was written out. I think I had some time at work where I was like, I don't have anything to do. I'm just gonna try and write out this scene that's been bopping around in my head for a little while. And that I think that was actually the first cutscene that I actually wrote out and read, versus just like having the idea in my head and deciding in that moment to like, all right, you're gonna have a dream, or when you open this door, you remember when you opened a different door back a while ago. Things like that. Thinking about those transitions almost in more of a cinematic kind of cut to cut overlap, like in like just having the thematic thing where opening a door in one cutscene or flashback can bridge you to a moment of opening a door in the present moment or something like that. Kind of visual cards. Archer does that kind of stuff a lot.
And Archer has been one of my greatest influences to how I run the show. Like,
Really?
like just well, like, yeah. The running jokes, the weird kind of meta level of awareness that show has, and I think most recently, the changing of the musical intro theme to reflect.
Oh,
I reflect
the change in the style. Yeah, like, you know, again, a little behind the scenes here is there was a bit of convincing that needed to happen to say, hey, I wanted to change the theme, because the theme has been long one of the things that a lot of people have said, man, I really like that opening music. It's real catchy, you know, like, for sure it is. But like, I wanted it to be relevant to what we were doing at the time. And so we took the theme, and Zach and I basically reorchestrated it to fit the vibe of what.
It'd be way too irreverent if you use that for a horror campaign.
Yeah, like it just didn't fit, you know, just didn't fit.
I don't begrudge you at all for that, because spoiler alert, the new theme is so fucking good too.
Oh man,
it's better than the original in my opinion.
I love the original, but the new theme fucking tickles. You know, it gets right into what I like to GM. So
it slaps.
I'm all about it.
It does. There's distorted guitars and everything.
What? Is there a whammy bar?
At least halfway down the thigh is where it slaps.
All right, more listener questions. I got another one here. I got this one's from Kyle. Fun reflective question. On average, how often do sessions end up matching with what you prep or expected, if ever?
Less than 15% of the time.
I'd say 50-50. I'm usually at 50-50.
It depends.
I feel 50. Like, it never goes exactly how I thought it was going to go, but broad strokes, I'd say 50-50.
You know, I do this thing when I'm like prepping where I decide what the important story beats are for an encounter, or for not an encounter, for a night of play. And I decide all of the different ways that I think that they can hit those beats, or all of the ways I'd like to direct them to those beats. And after I've got all of the beats written down, I've got like maybe, 5 different branches to get to those beats. They always come up with a branch that I never thought of to get to that beat. It's common for my group, though.
Can we put a 3rd star next to the improvisation topic?
Yeah. We're just going to keep putting stars there. I mean, that's going to be, if we were doing stars for people in our kindergarten class, he'd be top of the class.
Yeah.
But see, when it comes to the improv session, that's going to be mine. I love improving.
I think this is very different for all of us, though, because realistically, like the way that Hideous Laughter records, we record a 2-hour session every week, and it's much harder to get off of what the GM is thinking is going to happen in that time period. Whereas I don't know exactly how all of you record, but Adam, usually when I record with you, it's 2 sessions, and Allard, you were a whole fucking season ahead of time, but seriously, I don't know how you recorded all of that. And Tyler, I think you record a couple sessions, right? In a night.
I don't decide where episodes end. We play for 4 hours, and then I let David make the creative decision as to where the episode ends.
So I think that's the different thing in how
That
this
is very
question
different.
can be answered,
That
because
is
it's
very
like
different.
I like
my
the second
players,
eye.
my players have very little opportunity to make it go. I mean, they can certainly take it in every direction that they want to, but they only have 2-hour chunks in which to do that. And so I feel like that my prep doesn't have to be as branching, because I'm playing with them for 2 hours every single week. Whereas if I were, and I got a big dose of it during COVID, because we recorded like 10 episodes in a row. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, you guys could go fucking any direction. This is not my normal thing. So
Well, those particular 10 episodes too were in a sandbox environment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely going to vary based off of your session time for that too.
Yeah. For me, the surprising thing, or what catches me off guard, is that my players never get as far as I think they're going to get. You know what I mean? Like it always takes them longer than I think it's going to take. Like no matter what.
My players give me so much shit for that, because when we do the evil interludes, we record all of that in one session, and I'm like, yeah, 3 sessions tops. Three sessions, hour and a half each, tops. Fucking 6 hours, 4 sessions. Like, sorry guys, I couldn't get it all out.
I feel like that's probably across the table for all of us on that. I mean, you always think how they're going to approach it, but the time frame that it takes them to to go through those things. I mean, you gotta include time for bullshitting and one-liners and shit like that. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's just like, it's weird, because then you're like, as a GM, well, for me, I'll say, I won't speak for all of you, but I tell my players throughout the week, every week, like to the point of annoyance of my players, I'm going to #GM call out myself. Like,
oh shit.
Do we have to drink for that? I guess we do.
We'll drink for that.
I mean, like, because it's legit. This is legit. This isn't just like some bullshit. I'm on my players week to week. What are you going to do? What are you thinking about? How's your character feeling? Blah, 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 blah. Right? Like, I'm like, give me everything that you got going on in your head. Right? And so then we get to the session and they're like, okay, well, he wants all the detail. Here we go. And I'm like, damn, why did it take you guys 2 hours to do?
You guys are fucking idiots.
To do this
It takes
content.
10 minutes.
There's a half hour of exposition in there.
I feel like I've heard that on your guys' episodes before too, where you're like, damn guys, that took a while. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? What'd you think was going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what it is, and like, but like, that's why I love my players. So player shout out, like
Player shout out, we drink for those too, right?
No, we regurgitate one for that. Yeah, we'll drink one. That was so pleasant.
That's some GM shit that like everybody was on
you
that.
Such a great microphone, Allard, because that came through perfectly.
I only wish to serve you.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Oh,
Look, all right, it's 5 minutes till when we're supposed to end, but I feel like we have a lot of good listener questions.
we're going long, boys.
We should go a little long.
Let's go
we should
long.
Let's go, boys.
Yeah, we should go a little long.
I got still a bunch of whiskey here. So
Yeah, I've got a full beer.
Something I was thinking about just the other day with this whole going long thing. Is there a way to say it that's not like infringing upon how the GCP has already made a tag about
this episode is fully erect.
Stop it, Griffin.
You can all have that. You can all have that.
Yeah. We're way too engorged.
This session. You've entered the session extension.
Stop edging this episode because it's become huge.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Well, I don't know if any of those are better, but that's what you guys got.
That's what you get. That's what you
Goddamn
get.
well.
Passing it around. All right, next question.
Improv, 5th star.
Improv.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Do you have one, Tyler? I got one, but do you have one?
Yeah, I got one from Dane,
Okay.
one of Allard's players here. Question, I'm going to even read it in his voice here. Emotions, tears, true anger, maybe even leaving the table. how have you felt about your character's emotional in real life reactions to story elements?
Whoa.
That one's interesting because
Like, let me just go ahead and do a preemptive hashtag GM call out to
GM
this
call out?
question.
Oh, shit.
Well, I mean, it's
That's
just
it.
like this inevitable, you know.
A lot of whiskey. Do I have to get more?
I'll
things?
tell you this: I bust up more than my players. I'll be the first one to admit it.
Yeah.
Because I'm always the one reading through their hyper emotional backstory thing that they wrote up, and like it always fucking gets me. It chokes me up. It chokes me up before it chokes them up 100% of the time. I'm that guy at the table. I get emotional about it.
I too think I have a good bit of emotional investment in it. What catches me off guard is when I do something that I think that a player is going to love, and they react in a way that like they did not love it.
Ooh,
You know
that
what I
was
mean?
rough, man.
And like and that's what catches me off guard. You know, that's what throws me for a loop in a sense where I'm like, oh shit, I need to rethink everything that I thought about what's going on with this player and this character. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, is that a failure on your part, or is that just something that
I don't
you're
think failure
eliciting
is
a
the
real reaction?
No. So failure, I don't think is the appropriate word. I think
Good.
what that is an opportunity for me to learn something about one of my players.
Good.
You know, like,
Yeah.
because I mean, you know, as a GM, you know, you're trying to appease 4 to 6 people at all times.
Look, as a GM, I'm looking for like a 3-star Yelp rating. Okay,
right.
you
Like
know,
if I get 3,
anything above that's amazing.
Well,
Anything
like,
below
man.
that,
really, I'm looking for that 3.5 because I just want to be a little above average.
Fucking
you know what I mean?
overachiever.
Like, you know, well, yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
man.
like, yeah, that's the thing is like when your players throw you for a loop because you thought you knew what they wanted, and you set this up like, oh, this is going to be dope, and they're like, you know, like that's a learning fucking moment for a GM right there, dude. Like that,
yeah.
you need to fucking take a step back and be like, ooh, what did I misinterpret there? You know,
You know, that's interesting. A lot of times when I the most real reactions and most real emotion I get from my players is when they're frustrated that I'm kicking their ass in an encounter. That's most of the time where I get most of my anger from.
that's what I get most of my drinking.
Yeah, there you go. There you
my
go.
players. I've seen Steve house like a whole growler of beer when he was stressed about an encounter.
Oh,
I've
man.
seen it happen
Oh, man.
right before my eyes, and I was like, well,
you know, it's funny.
this will be
like,
the end.
It's
Yeah.
funny. I thought that Steve was like the most low key player of your podcast.
No,
You know?
Steve turns up.
Oh, dude, Steve's invested. Like, and it's you know, like when shit ain't going not Steve's way, but his character's way, I'll say. Because like Steve is cool when it comes to like the reality of how the game works, you know. But when his character isn't getting to do what they should do, it's like that's hard. It's a hard moment, and it's like that's what I'm saying. That was a lesson I learned as a GM.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
like I've heard Steve play for at that point 70 episodes. You know, like I thought I understood Steve as a player, but then I GM'd him, and then I understood Steve as a player. You know, like I was like, oh,
pass that hot potato to you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then I understood GM Griffin as a player too. You know, like
Oh, I'm sure.
that was a learning experience too. But like it's always a good thing. It's
You know-
always like a rewarding thing.
And I think there's something that we've danced around a lot. By the way, Griff and Adam have a tie-together podcast called Hideous Tomfoolery that
We
you
do.
can only get
It's true.
access to
If you're in the know, that's
if
it.
you're in the know.
Well, if you go to the next GM happy hour, you actually can get access because the next one I think will be on Adam's Discord,
Yeah.
and
Correct,
then
yeah.
once you're on the Southern Tomfoolery Discord, it's right.
That's
there.
half the name. That's half the battle.
That's half the battle.
See, and
They used to find one of us in a back alley and like fight us for the floppy disk.
to kind of
Yeah,
go
yeah.
back a little bit to like the emotions that we could elicit from players based on responses, expectations, those in real life emotions. I think one of the ones that I encounter most often is straight up surprise at how an NPC reacts to a circus troupe. Like when my circus troupe is role playing at me as an NPC who's just the mayor of a town, and like I'm like, oh no, you all are very strange people, and they're like, we're circus people. What the fuck did you expect, right?
Well, and then you got to be like, oh, well, wait, this is a mayor, so he should be a little bit more aware of what it's like. But like, you just didn't, you never had that thought until you're put in the moment, and you're like,
and there's,
oh damn, I have to like process this whole emotional chain in an instant.
Yeah, which is all part of, and I put that on like, that's probably something that, a mayor's heard of a circus. They may have, let the circus leader, rent space from them in town, but to actually have a full on conversation with a bunch of circus folk, surprise is probably the best reaction that they can give, Well,
it made for, it's not an unrealistic reaction, and it made for an interesting interaction because like, your players, I think, in that particular instance that I
think I know which one you're talking
brought
about,
up, that they were like hoping for more from the mayor, and the mayor was like, I don't know, you guys are just a bunch of weird circus folk. Like, I was just testing my own boundaries when I hired you guys to come here, and like, this is what happens, and I don't really understand it, and like, y'all figure it out.
Not really that into BDSM, all right, guys? Come on.
Which is interesting, and it's smart because it puts the onus back on the players. Like, no, this is your fucking mystery to figure out. You know what I mean? Like, and that goes back to your original question. How do you prep for the players at your table?
Yeah.
You know what your players are going to be interested in.
Hey guys, we're
like,
still doing
all of your
good.
players like, fuck this mayor. We're going to figure this shit out ourselves. And I'm sitting here like, Tyler has them in the palm of his hand.
I gotta ask Allard on something here. I'm hearing a lot of shit from Dane in the Discord about how emotional he gets and how he reacts. I just
you're the one
know.
running a relationship. God fucking bless you.
Yeah, and I gotta give you that one, man. That's rough.
The relationship has been fine, but I've been consistently trying to elicit emotional reactions from everybody in different ways regarding their parents. Basically, I've just been trying to get them all to cry, and I think Eli is the first one I've successfully done it to.
Yeah, your party actually has an interesting dynamic that most first-time TTRPGers don't do, is that they don't come from broken backgrounds. That's something that the vast majority...
That surprised the fuck out of me when I started listening.
Yeah, the vast majority of tabletop RPGers are like, yep, it's my first player, or my first character. I'm going to play an edgelord. Definitely going to play an edgelord.
I'm an escape slave. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I don't care about people.
I'm a mute, actually.
Oh, fuck. Don't get me started, man.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I would say GM call out right there.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
I almost played a mute in the last All on the Table, but then I realized, no, it's not really that fun to not talk to
You didn't want to be like...
I was like, once I realized nobody else took sign language, I was like, all right, I got to talk.
Oh, man.
Okay. Do we need another question?
I mean, unless Griff wants to put in on the real emotions thing. I know you talked a little bit about Steve.
I mean, yeah, I told you, I'm the real emotions.
Oh, that's true.
I'm the one that gets me the most. Everyone else, everyone else gets got after I'm already got.
And I'm trying to play like the psychopath sociopath that's just trying to like learn what makes people cry.
Well, don't poop in an unair conditioned game room. I'll tell you that.
Okay. Next question. Next question. Blartimus Slump. He asks, if y'all had to GM a module for another group here, what would y'all pick and prep? And I think that's a kind of a weirdly phrased question. So what I'll say is, you don't have to tell me who of our community you would run through a game. But if you were to run a game for the community, what would be the one that you would run?
For the community at large?
All of you through...
if like there was a lottery and Tyler got to run 5 people from our collective community, what AP do you think would be best suited for that? That's how I'm going to interpret Bartimus Slump's question.
I got a thought on it, but Griff sounded like he was halfway through.
I'm going to take it as module. And Carnival of Tears is one of my favorite modules I've ever read. And it's got the horror. It's got a little bit of like Extinction Curse-esque, like carnival fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the turnaround happens halfway through the AP, and it's horrible. And it also, I think this is one of like, I must have run this 3.5 to 4 years ago for Eric, who's 10 Lawn Gnomes in there, Steve, Haley, and a couple of our other friends, Brooks as well. And this Big Piggy voice I came up with for the character of Big Piggy in the module is something that like carried through way past the module. And we didn't even make it through the module, but like you have this character that's like, well, little man, you want to try slashing my pants? And he's like this disgusting 500-pound dude that like is like the pie maker. And, you know, if you've read the AP, obviously becomes a horrible person.
I love your piggy voice, man. That's one of my favorite modules. That when I read it, I'm with you. That was one of my favorites.
Just so much fun.
Yeah.
It's so much fun, and I feel like it's cohesive enough for a module, even though there's a lot going on. It's not like one of those modules where it takes you through parts. It doesn't really feel like it's like you can spend as much or as little time on the carnival games as you want, but then you're like in the meat and potatoes, and you're in that until it's over. And so I feel like it kind of borders on the edge of a society scenario and a module for me, which makes me feel like it'd be perfect to run for the community or for you guys, just because like I feel like it'd be much like a 2-session, 4-hour each session scenario, and you get through it.
Which means it's 4 sessions, 4 hours each session. In reality,
as you know.
Yeah. So my answer comes from a place of naivety, right? Because like all I've run are big epic adventures, like long-term, full commitment campaigns, right? And so like a hideous laughter or hideous tomfoolery, I'm sorry, began as this question. Like I wanted to play a game with Griffin and Steve, along with some of the folks from our podcast. And I think that the first book of Attack of the Swarm stands alone as an awesome adventure, as an awesome introductory adventure to Starfinder. You learn all the rules you need to learn. It's cinematic as fuck. It's a very clear, like, here's the enemy. This is what you need to do. Like, you need to survive this assault and get off the planet. Like, you need to like figure out how to survive and then escape. Like that's fun. And like it ends if you succeed in it. It ends in a satisfactory way that you could literally end the story right there. Good to go. Yeah, that's it.
I think,
and I love Starfinder, so that's why I would choose a Starfinder adventure to run, because I want to introduce people to that system, and I think it's a great system. And I think the first book of Attack of the Swarm is probably the best first book of any of the adventures that are out there, as far as introducing people to the mechanics of the system in an interesting way. Like, there's lots of combat, so you learn what's important in Starfinder very quickly in that game, in that adventure. And so, like, to me, that's it. Yeah, like the first book of Attack of the Swarm, I think if you're interested in Starfinder, play that, and then choose an AP from there. If you want to continue the Attack of the Swarm story, great. It gets cool. It stays cool. It's a great adventure. But you can also say, okay, now I learned something. I can start at level 1 again in a way that I want to start at level 1, better understanding the system, and create a character that, like, this, now I know how this works, and I'm creating a character within that. And here we go on our actual adventure.
So Adam, I don't know what kind of writing chops you got, bud, but one of my biggest gripes with Starfinder is that the goddamn system does not contain modules, and they have not written any modules for it. I feel like that would be the biggest boon.
Hashtag GM
to
challenge.
Starfinder. Hashtag GM challenge.
Yeah.
Shit. New hashtag already on the second episode.
I'll
That's a
drink for
good
it.
one, man. Dude, I'm about it. The hashtag.
I'm
GM
about it too.
challenge.
That system,
good.
that system so severely needs modules because that's what gets people. That's what
It
lets
needs a
people
free-
dip their
that short
toes.
form.
It needs a
Yeah.
3-level adventure so you
Yep.
can learn how to play the
Yes.
game.
100%.
Why do you think
I
so
agree.
many people dip their toes into
No,
two?
the Skittermander one
As-
doesn't count. Blood
as
on the Slump.
weird
I'm going to
as-
stop that right now.
Yeah,
in the
get outta
chat.
here.
That shit doesn't count. That's not
Agreed.
right.
That's
It's not
Weeby
an introduction
Goblins,
to the
and
system.
it's not what we're talking about. But
Mhm.
but like the reason, not the reason, but like a bunch of first edition players dip their toes into 2E with Plaguestone. Not that Plaguestone is like the most phenomenally written or anything,
Or balanced.
That's a
or
different
balance,
conversation
you know,
entirely.
but it's such a smaller commitment that it makes it so much more doable from both a GM and a player perspective, and it
Mhm.
allows you to have the flexibility to do exactly what you said, which is I want to play 1 through 3 Starfinder, see if I like the goddamn system because I'm a first edition player or something, or I'm a 5e player. And I want to see if I like the system. I need a module that gives me all of that, and then I can start a new story on an AP. But I need a module.
100%. Like Starfinder needs that. It needs that introductory adventure. The beginner box.
I agree. Well, the vast
I mean,
majority
I
of
love
the
you
time,
guys
the
for
beginner
doing
boxes.
it,
That's
but
such a
the-
lame representation of what Starfinder can be. Like, it's just.
Yeah, here I'll go
right.
on with mine before you get stuck on that because that's a whole nother conversation. I would absolutely love, and I know we're talking small form modules, but on a very real sense, I would love to run the 3 of you and one other. I've already got somebody in mind, but I won't bring it up since they're not here. Through
Okay.
Hell's Rebels specifically.
I was
Dude.
gonna say that.
Oh,
That's
were
an
you?
AP.
I have all the
It's an
books.
AP.
Dude,
it's
Allard's
amazing
been trying to
story.
get that project started since the inception of his community.
You have been? I didn't even know that.
It was
Well, it was,
it
Hell's
was an
Vengeance.
over-ambitious idea
No,
that
it
I
was
just
Hell's
like
Rebels.
snowballed with right away.
Oh man.
And so I
I-
got some people together.
I love Hell's Rebels. It's such an oddball from left field AP. You never see an evil AP. And
Oh, you're talking Hell's Vengeance?
no, I got it
Vengeance
backwards,
is
didn't
evil
I?
one, yeah.
Hell's Vengeance.
Oh, vengeance!
I'm not
I'm
thinking
all
of the
about
same
vengeance
thing.
too.
I take
Yeah.
back everything I said.
everything.
Take
Okay.
it all back.
Hell's Vengeance is the one I'd like to do because I'd love to see
I'm down with that though.
you guys write backstories for evil characters, make them believable, and I would
Well, yeah,
love
because
to do
none
that.
of us would do like the typical like, oh fuck everything evil character. Like we'd have like some real like meaningful motivations for our evilness.
For sure.
We're fucking GMs.
That's what I
our
want.
job.
Oh, that would be so
That's
much
our
fun,
job.
dude.
I'm an evil character
I'm down.
corrupted by a deity. I'm becoming good slowly.
Oh no, that's interesting. That's
Slowly
interesting.
becoming good.
See, yeah, that's what I would love
I'm
to
doing
play.
a reverse corruption. I've been
Reverse
possessed by a
corruption,
good
dude.
spirit. You know?
Yeah, so I'm down with this. I'm ready to go. Let's.
We make no commitments live on stream, Allard. That's not how
However,
we
I
do
think
it.
we
I
should
forgot.
say if
Sorry.
this does happen, that Allard should be the GM.
No,
I would
haven't
agree.
read it. I guess
No,
you guys
no,
have.
like
I'd
Let
be
me
down with
play
that.
something.
everybody in chat, make
But
the
I
vote.
guess
All
you guys
in
all
favor, say
agree.
aye. That Allard is the GM of the FFSC AP Hell's Rebels.
We make no commitments after 3 drinks.
But it sounds like two
well,
of you.
I
Like,
do.
at least, Tyler,
fuck's
you've
sake,
read it now.
Coalition.
I've read Hell's Rebels and Hell's Vengeance. Hell's Vengeance is my favorite of the two. They're kind of two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to play the evil character.
Do you? Okay, I'd be happy to
Let
run
me
it.
be the bad guy.
I'd be happy to run it. I mean, that's my bread and butter is GMing for other people. So if I could get a chance to run for you guys, I'd fucking love it.
I
Okay.
want to.
Another star for improvisation.
Let's start right now.
Yeah. I'm with it. I'm 100% about it. Like, let's do that shit.
You got
I
one
would
vote
play
for Tyler.
one E
We
to
got two votes
do
for-
that. You know, like That would be my 1E experience.
Yeah,
I'm
get
all
Adam
about
into
it.
1E. There you go.
That'd be my.
That'd be an interesting way to get you into 1E, actually.
Yeah, it would.
Yes.
And look
it
at
would.
chat. They're like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tyler, you're GMing, and yeah, we're all gonna be evil.
Yep.
Against you.
And
Start
yeah.
GM prepping now.
Fuck. You know what? I've been prepping a different game for everybody that I was gonna throw at you guys months from now, but now I'm gonna have to change my plans.
Oh shit.
I'm gonna have to change my plans.
We can do both.
Fuck,
Yeah,
don't make me
all
do
of
that.
it.
I got a kid. I got that much time.
I forgot.
Get you a GM who could do both.
Oh man.
But I guess my entries to this question, there's the harrowing module, which I either really want.
You almost got me to run for
I
you.
know, I almost got you to run for it. And I was like, I kind of have set it up for our canon just in case with this one character. But I think I'm still on the side that I'd rather play that one just because I made a character a long time ago who like wanted to do this module, or else like Hell's Rebels. I'll do the other side of the coin.
Look, that's a whole nother subject, but you guys started something tonight. I hope you're proud of yourselves.
Way to go.
We got another
You're
question.
goddamn proud of yourself.
Yeah, we got another question.
What?
This one comes from Kyle. Can you fellows delve into the methods you use to tie character backstories together while simultaneously tying them into the plot?
Can we do that one?
We did do that question, buddy.
Boom. Answered it.
Full disclosure, I posed that question, so it was
You
probably
did.
like over your head on that.
Yeah. God damn it.
God damn it, indeed.
I blame Kyle.
Cut the mic.
I blame
It's easy
GM
to
Happy
blame.
Hour
Oh,
for
let's
that.
blame
The
Kyle.
happy hour part of this.
That's a
for that.
GM call out right there.
Okay, hold on.
GM
This
call-out.
this one plays off a little bit on the last question. What crew do you wish you were a PC in that isn't your campaign? I've been
Okay,
ruminating on this one.
Well, okay. I have a very quick answer. I would have liked to play a Starfinder character in Haley's campaign of Dead Sons.
Oh yeah, that was.
That
You would
was
have got
awful.
very drunk. You would have got very drunk.
Oh,
Did I ever tell you about
clearly,
how we
clearly.
used to make like as we played, we used to make beer pyramids. We made pyramids. And like you started
Steve's
with the
mentioned
base.
it a time or
Yeah,
two.
you start with a base of 5, then 4, 3, 2, 1, and you know that was how you started the sesh.
Wait, that's how you
I
started.
don't remember
or
a ton
ended?
of Dead Sons.
I would love to be a player in Allard's Second Darkness.
Yeah.
I would love it. Second Darkness is one of the most, and this kind of goes to, I mean, not to like bash on the Paizoverse podcasting community here a bit, but I feel like Second Darkness gets overlooked so much, and it holds so much of Galarian's base story within
That's what
those
I
6
thought
books.
too.
Yeah. I would love to take part in that, and I've never had a chance to play in or run Second Darkness. That's my
All
answer.
right, we'll work you in.
Yeah. Hey, dude, I'm just like,
Look at you in there.
I'm like 10 miles away. We could do this, man.
It's true.
It's a true statement. It's a true
You got
statement.
Sundays open?
No.
Hey guys, you're in chat. What's up? You
What's
guys
up?
wanna- We already have another guy on the wings, but he's a. I guess he's a musician, so he doesn't have any work right now.
Damn.
Gee,
Rub it in,
call
buddy.
out.
I feel targeted. like
I'm
a
sorry, Adam.
motherfucker.
I know that you can sympathize with this.
Get
but,
triggered, man.
his weekends opened right up.
Well, that's nice.
Oof, 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 F in the chat
big oof.
for musicians,
In the chat.
motherfuckers.
Like, it's a bad thing. The whole entertainment industry in general is getting
Poor
slapped in the
bastards, man.
fucking face.
I
Yeah,
feel
it's
bad
not
for
great.
him.
But you're right. Our weekends are free.
Bar
You're not wrong
mitzvahs,
about
you
that.
ain't wrong.
No longer wrong.
You're not wrong about that. Our weekends are free.
What about you guys?
Personally, I want to play in your campaign because I desperately want more 2E. I
Yeah?
desperately want more 2E.
It's such a fun system, dude.
Yeah, I've loved GMing it. I've loved playing in it, and I know you guys take the rules seriously, so I'm for it.
Yeah.
Because especially with the APG coming out, like,
shit,
there's so
right?
much more new shit.
It's not out yet. I've got a countdown on my desktop of when it comes out because I'm so excited to implement things from it into the game because
I got a pre-shipment notification, and I'm ready for the shipment notification, so I know that it's at least 12 days out.
On the way.
On the way from
the
slowest shippers in the universe.
My answers for this, I think I'm kind of split because like I always thought that like, and I have done it now, but I wanna RP more with Steve for one. Our characters and all on the table were kind of not really that compatible, so I didn't get to do it too much. But I always felt like I would vibe with Steve. And then I also kind of want to be told what to do by Ziva. So there's a little bit. There's kind of it's a little split there.
I think, I feel you on both fronts, dude.
Oh man, well that's a thing that happens on the Southern Tomfoolery podcast. So
people get told to do? No way.
Want to be told what to do by Ziva?
What about
Sounds
you,
great.
Adam?
Look no further.
Well,
you,
thank
Adam?
God her HTF character does not do that.
No, her HCF character is very opposite of Ziva.
Told what to do.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, like I want to play Starfinder with y'all. So whatever opportunity I would have, like I made that opportunity for Hideous Tomfoolery, and for Tyler and Allard, like let's play some Starfinder.
Dude, we should do it.
Get me into it. So I've had Tyler teach me 2E. Now I want you to teach me Starfinder. I have the core rule book, but I haven't really learned it yet.
You can take a full action and move as long as you're a GM controlled.
All you have to do is realize when the GM's fucking you, and then just hold it under your hat till you're ready.
I've learned to fall in love with Starfinder. When it first came out, the first AP I played for it was Dead Suns. We got through Dead Suns, I think maybe book 4 or book 5, and I was just like, I'm not interested. I'm done. And that was just no fault on Dead Suns is the worst AP to start Starfinder on. I'm sorry.
It ain't good.
It's not that good.
When you
it
get real
came
drunk
out
and
before
Haley rushes
Starfinder was done. That's the problem.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
The problem. It came out before Starfinder was done.
Well, if you guys remember correctly, when Paizo released Starfinder, they were like, we're going to do an AP every 2 months. And so that I feel is why it had such a slow start, is because it was like Dead Suns for 8 months before they decided, okay, we're going to do every month now. Like people are interested in Starfinder, yada, yada, yada. Like they weren't by the millions of copies that sold at Gen Con that year. But,
right.
But that's the biggest detriment, is that you had 2E that released Age of Ashes, was done with it in 6 months, because by all accounts, that's a jump around the place, fucking non-optimized, learn how to play 2E campaign as well. But Starfinder had to sit on that for so much longer. They didn't have anything. Yeah. And they didn't have the modules, which brings me back to the Starfinder modules.
Starfinder modules, Adam.
Circle. It brings me full goddamn
GM
circle.
challenge accepted.
Oh shit! Here we are making commitments after 3 drinks. That's against the rules, but we'll take it.
It's against the rules, so all these are invalid. But later, you can still bring them up at another GM happy hour.
Adam, if you were to write a Starfinder module for us, what planet would you put it on?
Ooh, Akaton.
Yeah, I love Akaton.
Love Akaton.
Without a doubt, Akaton. It would be a space western on Akaton. That's what it would be.
Dude.
I can dig it.
Give me some of that Isoki action. Yes, Griff. God.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Do we have any more questions in here?
I think we got one more.
Yeah.
All right.
EP
I
joined
got
late.
one more
He's
in me
got a
too.
few.
I've got one. Tyler, you got one.
I got
Griffin,
one.
You have one.
I didn't take any of them. I'm banking on you guys.
Do it.
I got 4 or 5. My bad.
Because I'll do the same thing as Adam and just repeat one.
Well, no, I'm going to try to redeem myself here with a non-repeated question.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's a 50-50 shot here. Just like our players when we prep a session.
Yeah.
The question comes from Emily from Southern Tomfoolery. What was an instance where you put a lot of effort into prep for something that the players wound up completely missing or dismissing? And I think this
Oh,
is kind of
boy.
at the root of the question of how far do you prep as a GM because of this
Yeah.
particular problem.
I have some feelings on this one.
Now,
All right, Griff started us off then.
Yeah.
I will start us off. So, Adam, you can commiserate with this. Like, when I prepped Escanor Lodge for book 3, I prepped a fucking ton because it's supposed to be a murder mystery and you're supposed to get to know all of the NPCs before shit starts going down. And it's this intrigue heavy thing. And obviously I have a powerful occultist and an investigator on the scene, at which, you know, I'm very
Sherlock Holmes on your like low level murder mystery party.
Exactly.
Right.
And I'm very happy they did what they did because that allowed me to have the episode 100 I wanted.
For sure.
But
For sure.
but when I started Ascanor, I was pissed, man. I was pissed that like just shit was getting found out immediately. Like I turned the hey, it's a 2011 AP, so there's no intrigue rules. So you just find shit out. I turned all of that into a library combat so I could at least dole the information out slower. And I was like, I can't keep anything from these guys. I'm fucked. So
It's rough.
Know everything.
let's just end it.
I have an answer to that question. Emily, you don't know this, but I'm going to tell you now because you asked the question.
Ooh.
I did not expect Gulpta to go the way that it did, and I'm going to try very hard to avoid heavy spoilers here, but there's likely to be some minor spoilers about the second book of our Aeon Throne run through. I did not expect y'all to screw it up as bad as y'all did.
Oh, got him. GM call out.
I mean, it's not even a GM call out. It's just how the shit went. You know, like it's just how it went. Like I provoked them into their mistake. Let's not make any.
It's true, you did.
If
you really did.
Or buts about it.
Mm-hmm.
I found their easiest like weakness and stabbed it as hard as I could. But they went for it, and so then we had a whole 10 episodes of something that I thought was going to take 3 episodes at most. At most, you know, that became a whole new arc from what I had planned, prepped, and gotten ready for.
But you know what, Adam? That was good radio.
Yeah, well, that's
That
the
was
part of
good
the
radio.
improv part of it. 6th star by
Improv.
Yeah.
I mean, he's almost third in the class now.
It's just like that. It was just, I thought they had a good plan. They had a great plan.
Well, you know what Sun Tzu says.
Fell apart fast.
It did. It did. It did. So that's all I'll say about it because I don't want to spoil it too much, but that's my answer to that question. You know, like I had a whole different plan for how that entire like back half of book 2 was supposed to go or was going to go. And I was put in like every week I got to figure out what's happening now every week for like
Sounds
7
like you're a
weeks.
GM prepping by the seat of your pants.
For sure.
For sure.
For sure.
Right on.
But it was awesome. It's one of my favorite
love
memories
that arc, man.
from the campaign. Like it was like that's what I'm talking about. You give your players an opportunity to surprise you as a GM. You're doing the shit right. You're doing that shit right.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking I can't really think of something that I've prepped too much, but I think it's because my players, they diverge from the path so near the start of it that I'm able to catch up to them by the time they actually hit the thing that I had planned for them. So I feel like it's a lot of me kind of being on my toes, trying to adjust to what they're actually angling at. Like the investigator taking an episode and a half to scout out something, but he's chaotic neutral. So when you go into the area, he pushes somebody through a door and it starts really awkwardly after all that meticulous prep to get the whole scene. And then I have to not use anything that I prepped and just throw everything at them at once. So it's
there's been a situation where it's like, oh, I thought this was going to be 3 separate encounters. Nope,
It's
this is
one.
all one encounter.
No longer.
Oh yeah. No, I think I haven't had a lot of that happen to me on air yet.
You're early in your adventure yet.
I am
though.
very early in my adventure yet. We haven't cleared book 1. We just on air cleared through chapter 3 of book 1. We just behind the scenes cleared through book 1. And for us, Extinction Curse book 2 is where they're going to throw me a lot of curveballs. I just know it, because to kind of touch back on an earlier question, how do you tie character backstory into the adventure or to the story that you're playing? Extinction Curse handed it to me on a silver platter, and it's called the Celestial Menagerie, which is the circus that they all came from, the abusive circus that they split from in order to form the Circus of Wayward Wonders. And it's not a huge spoiler. Straight up, it's foreshadowed heavily in the first book. They encounter the Celestial Menagerie in book 2, and I've rewritten, I would say, half of the Celestial Menagerie encounters to fit my party, which is a little bit different than what I might have been talking about originally, but I'm curious to see how they take it. Very curious.
Yeah, and I think there's, like, we've talked about adjusting players to meet this campaign, but I mean, I think Griff has talked a little bit more of changing the AP to meet the players and their decisions.
That's okay to do.
That's the thing you should do.
Absolutely.
That's the thing you should do.
If you're a GM, take the gifts that the AP gives you if they give you those gifts, but make the gifts if the AP doesn't give you those gifts.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. Make it yours.
Yeah,
That's the whole point of Paizo APs. Make them yours.
That's the nice thing of getting everything ahead of time. If you see an encounter that's meant to be impactful in the story for a standard party and it's just not, throw it out. Put in something that is impactful.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
Agree with that.
Feel that.
All right, listen. I have one more question,
okay,
and then we've got to get out of here. The happy hour, they're kicking us out of the bar.
Yeah,
how's happy hour turned into closing time?
No, we're becoming the loud guys in the corner of the bar. The bartender's like, we got to get these guys out of here. I got one question, and I'm going to abuse my position of power to force in a question here from a family member of mine. And, like, she has just joined our whole FFSC community. Yeah. This is my sister Olivia. She has a question for all of us as GMs.
Woo.
Let's see. I'm sorry. Let me get it. She asked for some advice as someone who's starting their very first TTRPG. Like, she is about to start her first experience.
GMing or playing?
Yeah,
playing.
Important.
Playing. Okay.
And we're going to answer this question. And yes, bipolar Pop-Tart, nepotism in full effect.
I'll allow it. GM call out though.
We all have our own home rules going on for this whole stream, so things get a little loose. Everything about this is loose. Just let it be loose.
It's a happy hour.
The point is that it's loose.
Great. There's nothing keeping it tight.
So fellas, this is my sister who is about to start her journey into role-playing games. And so she's with us tonight, listening live.
Oh.
So I wanted to ask this question to all of you. What advice do you give her as she joins our hobby?
Man,
I got one.
I know it's a big question, but, like, come on.
No, this is the piece of advice. This is the piece of advice I give to every single new player. Rules are daunting. Rules feel like they're too much to take in all at once. And spoilers, they are. It takes years to master these systems. But what you should really do is come up with your character, feel how they feel, and interact with the world that the game master is putting in front of you. The rules will come with time.
Truly. Like, let me emoticon a truly.
Oh yeah,
real
get
quick.
that truly.
Truly.
Yeah, I gotta hit that.
I mean,
truly.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's the scariest thing about starting any of this is that it's like you're gonna fucking write a thesis one time with
this
the
book.
amount of reading you have to do.
Look at how thick
It's
this
crazy.
fucking book is.
It's a
This is
textbook
daunting.
size book. It's a
Yeah.
textbook size. It's like a whole semester's worth of information.
Yeah, you could
You
learn
know,
biology in that many pages.
You could learn biology, but now you're doing something way
So-
less good
fun.
for you.
Way more interesting.
Good for you, but
please.
way less good for your academics.
So understand that the rules come from experience. It just comes from playing it. Like there's nobody has ever started this game with 100% understanding of the rules. Period. Nobody has ever come to their first session being like, "Oh, I get this." No. And most, I think I would say 70% of all starting sessions, the GM is new at it too. They're learning
true.
it because they want to play the game. They're presenting a game to you, right? And they're learning it, and they have a responsibility to learn it faster than you, you know? So give your GMs a break, but also understand that they don't know just as much as you don't know. You know, like it's okay for you to be like, hold on a second, how does this actually work? Or it's also okay for you to be like, we're just going to say that I do this, and then we'll look into the rules of how this works after the session. Because like what I wanted to do was this. And I don't know exactly the rules of how it works, but we're going to say that like generally this is how it works. And then we'll look into the actual rules after, and we'll apply our actions to those rules going forward. Like,
I think, I mean, I would echo 100% what you both just said, but if you're brand new to TTRPGs, I just think that you need to know yourself a little bit. We talked about boundaries and stuff earlier. I think that's still important, whether you're playing with your good friends or you're playing with new friends or even strangers. This is a fun hobby, and from every interaction I've had is a very accepting hobby. A role-playing game is still an opportunity to get to role play things that you don't normally get to role play in real life, and that's okay. That's okay at my table.
I would
But
say
I
that
speak for
what
my
joins,
table.
Well, but I think what would join the four of our podcasts together and why we're doing this is because we all appreciate the synchronicity of story with fun at the table.
Mhm.
And that why we play this is because we get to tell a story together as friends. That's like the root of why we do this.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean?
Exactly,
And so
yeah.
like the rule of cool always remains supreme.
For sure.
What that threshold, what defines rule of cool is going to vary from table to table. And that's something that you should discuss as a table. Like it's important to discuss before you even start a campaign. It's like making sure that the expectations are aligned of
Exactly.
what you can and can't do as a player and what the GM can and can't do as a GM.
Yeah. And I think I would add to the whole new player concept. Like there's something to say about knowing what your abilities as your character do, but it's also something to think about when you're just trying to get into playing. Just tell the GM what you want to do, and then try to understand how they translate what you wanted to do into actions in the game. So
Right.
I want to run over here and grab this thing and like throw it to my player. Can I ask if you can do it? And they'll be like, well, you can like in 2E, you'd be like, yeah, you can run over there, grab it, run over there with one action, grab it with the second action, and then throw it with a third action. or something to that effect. And then that's how you really start to understand how the rules relate to the like physical actions that you want to take to accomplish your goal. And once you understand how the rules solidify gameplay in a grounded reality, that's when things pick up. But first you develop that understanding by asking what, or telling what you want to do and asking how it can be accomplished.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
But like you got to give it to your GM to
Yeah.
arbitrate those rules. You
Yeah,
know,
and
like it's just what you have to do. You know, and like a good GM is going to communicate with you throughout the entire process to make sure that you're on the same page. But at the end of the day, the GM is the one who's been trusted to arbitrate the rules of the world that you live in.
I mean, that's
You know?
that's something
They're
that
the
the table has given the GM that responsibility, respect that responsibility, and give them the option to arbitrate those things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that, I mean, of course, you know, it depends on the type of table you're playing with, but this is new player advice. Explain what you want to do. Like Allard said, rules will come second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I Big Mood just put a very real statement in the chat, and I just want to echo it, make sure that people hear it. Is that you don't need to have a funny voice to embody your character. You can tell the GM, you can tell the rest of the players at the party what your character does. You can say, instead of saying, oh, okay, my character says, oh, look at me, I'm a very British person and I have some very interesting dialect and shit, so look at me. You can instead, you don't have to do that. You can say, my character feels this way and this is the way that she communicates to the NPCs. I don't feel comfortable with this situation, and I think what they're suggesting is unfair. Like, you can still talk in your own voice and still give characterization to your character.
Funny voices are not a requirement.
And like, what's important is that you give your character their own personality. However that works for you, do it. You know, if it works for you, like really embracing the mechanics of your character, great. Really embrace it and make sure that you know everything that your character can do mechanically.
Yeah.
If you're more interested in the motivations of your character, fully embrace the RP of it. If you want to have a blend of it, great. Why does your character have this mechanic ability to do this RP thing? You know what I mean? Like, all of those are valid options, and the ways that you should approach this as a new player is make it comfortable for you, because this is your escape. This is your fun. This is your ability to tell a story with your friends.
Yeah. And I would like to add that as like in a new role-playing environment, I find it almost just as powerful as like hearing a character deliver kind of some monologue that explains what they're feeling, almost at the same level as somebody who knows when to say, oh, my character, after that was said, my character sits back in their chair and like kind of looks off. That those, not having to relate your character in just dialogue alone is something that I think gets overlooked a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm.
I think none of us have said what needs to be said, which is just like, it doesn't fucking matter what you do.
Yeah.
If you're having fun, it doesn't fucking matter.
Have fun.
You can play any system. You can play any rules. Your GM can be as lax or as strict as possible. You can do as much role play or as little role play as you want to do. Nobody gives a shit as long as you're having fun, except 100%. For the rest of your table, which, you know, you have to consider, like, but you should all have fun.
It's the social
and maybe
contract.
You need to have,
fun.
maybe you need to have a social contract, have a talk about what is fun.
Yeah.
But like, if you're all having fun, I don't give a shit if you're playing Pathfinder with Blades in the Dark rules. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you're doing, because if it's fun to your table, it's fun to your table. That's the most important thing. When it stops being fun to your table is when a conversation needs to be had. But as long as it's fun to your table, I mean, that should just be gravy. That should be fun to come back to every week. You should want to come roll dice. Like, that's the best part of it. That's the whole reason we all do what we do. Not because we're trying to be like fucking podcast famous, because God bless us if we were thinking that. But it's because we have fun. We enjoy what we do. It's
gonna
It's
happen.
a blast.
I think that's a perfect place for us to close this one out. Guys, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to close this all out, and the rest of you bastards are going to finish your drinks with me.
Okay.
That's what we're here for, because the bartender's kicking us out.
Closing time.
I want to thank everybody in the Discord for hanging out with us. Again, for those of you joining us on YouTube, if you want to have part in these conversations, come be with us. Come talk with us. Come, listen to us play games and talk with us about playing those games. We want that more than anything. This is what makes us happy as podcasters. We want to interact with the community, and the Paizo community is this beautiful, accepting place for all types of people to come and play and have fun. But until next time, thanks a lot for joining us, and you guys have a good rest of your night.
Here, here.
I was going to say that. Here.
See you, gang.